often simply known as Pcpid. I'd like to welcome the Pcpid committee members and thank them for their time this afternoon. As background, the committee has 33 members. Of the 33 members, 20 are citizen members and 13 are ex officio members representing the different agencies across the federal government. I'd also like to extend a very warm welcome to members of the public listening in today's meeting. We announced today's meeting in the Federal Register, a plan for this meeting in late June. We are so pleased with the strong response received to have over 500 individuals registered for this event. As many of you know, this week, the nation celebrated the 32nd anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. As President Biden shared in his proclamation this week, quote, "This landmark legislation has been a driving force in moving America closer to the promise of equal opportunity, full participation, independent living, and economic self-sufficiency for the 61 million individuals with disabilities in our country." End of quote. Well, my hope is that the transformation spirit of the ADA will be our guiding principle for the Pcpid's committee work to help further advance the needle of policies and initiatives that support independence and lifelong community inclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. To achieve that goal, our meeting today is one step in that direction. Today, the committee will reflect and identify a topic to get addressed in a report with recommendations that will get shared with the President and the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I'd like to provide you a brief overview of how our meeting will flow today. Today's meeting agenda is currently posted on the ACL Pcpid website, and a member of our team will enter that link into the chat. Or you can Google ACL Pcpid and find the ACL page. You can scroll down to the Pcpid meeting agendas at the bottom of the page. We will begin today's meeting with ACL leadership sharing opening remarks. We'll also get a briefing from ACL staff and on information collected to date from committee members and the public. We will then hear from a very talented team of subject matter experts that will share their insights of latest trends and research on issues facing people with intellectual disabilities and their families. Then following this hour briefing, we've added Q&A time for the committee members to ask the panel questions. And around 2 p.m., we will take a 15-minute break. When we reconvene after that, we'll have an opportunity to hear from members of the public to read their statements stemming from their previous submission before the committee. After hearing public comments, the committee will collectively discuss what they believe is the leading issue that needs to get addressed by the committee, and then nominate particular topics. And then based on the committee's feedback, we will have an online committee vote. ACL will announce the topic that will be formed over the next 7 to 10 business days. And then we will adjourn our meeting at 4 p.m. today. I'd like to close with a few housekeeping items to help smooth things. This meeting is being recorded. We will post the slides and the transcript from today's meeting on the ACL Pcpid website between 5 and 7 working days. During today's meeting, public will be in listening mode, and we appreciate your interest to join us and observe as virtual audience members. Committee members, your lines will be muted to prevent background noise, interference throughout our meeting. When you have a question or a comment, you can do one of the following. You can enter it into the chat. Your comment will be visible to the public as read. Or you can raise your hand. A member of the census team will unmute your line. So let's get started. We will begin with opening remarks, ACL leadership. We will begin Allison Barkoff, who is currently ACL acting administrator. And then following Allison's remarks will be Jill Jacobs, who serves as the commissioner, the Administration on Disabilities and the designated federal official for Pcpid. I want to sincerely thank both for your leadership and the support to this committee. I will now transition it to you, Allison, for opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I'm really pleased to be here today. I'll just start with a very brief visual description. I'm a middle-aged white woman with curly brown hair and a flowered black shirt on, with a blue logo behind me with a blue background with an ACL logo. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for joining today's meeting. And on behalf of the Biden-Harris administration, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Administration for Community Living, I want to thank each of the 33 members who are serving on the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities, or PCPID. As Jim mentioned, 13 of the members represent various federal agencies. And it really reflects the fact, as I say all the time, that there is no one agency or even one department that owns disability. Disability is about so many things. It's about community living, it's about education, it's about transportation, it's about housing, and we are really fortunate to have our federal colleagues joining us. And I also want to thank the 20 members from the public, the citizen members who were appointed by the president, for the incredible expertise and perspectives that you will bring to this committee. And finally, thank you, Jim, for serving as the chair. I know you will be incredibly able from the opportunities that I've had to see your leadership in the past. I also want to thank members of the public who are joining us today. We were so pleased to have so many public comments submitted, and I appreciate those who plan to provide comment today. For more than 50 years, the PCPID has advised the President of the United States and the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services on issues impacting people with intellectual disabilities. And the committee is charged with a very solemn job with providing recommendations about a range of things like policy changes that are needed to better support and improve the well-being, independence, and inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities. Things like the range of services and supports that people with intellectual disabilities need and how we can make them more available. How to promote community participation and full inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities in all aspects of community life. And very importantly, helping identify ways that federal, state, and local governments, in collaborations with organizations and people with disabilities and their families, can work together towards these goals. Because PCPID is charged with advising both the President and the HHS Secretary, each of you have an incredible an important opportunity to help shape national policy and make systemic change for people with intellectual disabilities. Each committee member was chosen because you bring so much expertise and leadership and important lived experience, all of which will be critical to our work together to break down barriers faced by people with intellectual disabilities and their families. And to the many members, more than half of our committee members who themselves are people with disabilities, I want to thank you. Your voices are so critical, and you are truly helping us ensure that the phrase, "nothing about us without us," is a reality. To all of the members of PCPID, you are building off this committee's incredibly rich history and decades-long legacy. The PCPID's work has always been about making the promise of full inclusion, self-determination, and lifelong participation in all aspects of community life a reality for everyone with an intellectual disability. And your work here with the committee is truly about advancing the long arc towards justice for people with disabilities. Thank you again for your service. The staff at ACL and I are committed to doing everything we can to supporting the committee's important work. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome ACL's Commissioner on Disabilities, Jill Jacobs. And I want to thank Jill for agreeing to serve on PCPID as the designated federal officer. Jill, the floor is yours.
I think that for the first time ever in a virtual meeting, I've remembered to unmute myself before I started speaking. So kudos to me. Hello, everyone. My name is Jill Jacobs. As Allison said, I am the Commissioner of the Administration on Disabilities. Thank you, Allison, for your wonderful words. It's always hard to follow Allison. She is, so her comments are always so full of the big words, and I love the way that she speaks. So thank you, Allison, for that. I'm really honored to be here today. Well, first, let me describe myself. I am a white woman, middle-aged, with brown hair. I'm wearing a white shirt and a silver necklace. I am in my daughter's office today, and behind me are, I don't know, a lot of degrees and some art on the wall, a stack of books. I am seated in a chair, a black chair, which you can see a little bit of behind me, and I'm wearing eyeglasses. So I am extremely honored to be here today. I fully recognize that I am in a position of privilege, and I am committed to the role that I have here on PCPID as a federal official. I'm really pleased that this committee has changed over time, and that this year, for the first time, more than half of the membership of the committee is actual people with actual disabilities. That's so valuable. And amongst all of you, we have almost half of the committee membership are people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. That is such a key difference, such a key change. And amongst us, we have people who are from all different kinds of communities. We have people who have experienced life at what we call the intersections of disability and other identifiers. And we have people on this committee who have experienced not only marginalization and living at the fringes, but who have experienced what we call multiple marginalization, combinations of situations that we have tended to push to the edges. And so I'm so glad that for the first time there are so many people on this very important committee who we are bringing from the edges, who you have brought yourselves from the edges and brought yourselves forward and been identified by the president as people who need to be on this committee, people he wants on this committee, people whose voices are going to make such a difference on this committee and bring us forward and move our whole community forward. So I'm very grateful and honored to be here for just some of those reasons. We really reflect society as a whole a little bit more today, I think. I'm really glad that we're meeting as we come to the end of Disability Pride Month. Yay, 32nd anniversary of the ADA. I'm very pleased for that. I'm pleased that we are really identified as full members of the disability community, as we like to say, the DISCO, in the intellectual and developmental disability community. And I want to thank all of you who are appointed to the President's Committee, to PCPID, for your willingness to serve, your commitment to the work and to really doing the labor, and your dedication to the progress of people with disabilities and our community as a whole. I want to point out that we have here at our helm as our chair, Jim Brett, who spoke already. Jim Brett has many years of experience under his belt doing this work, in this field, in service, true service to advancing disability justice. He's the chair of PCPID. He's also the co-chair of NCD, the National Council on Disability, and he's previously served as the PCPID chair. What we are going to do here is produce a report, produce a document that we are then going to, that will then be given to the President of the United States. And with Jim having had so much experience, I think we have some leadership to guide us through in a really solid way. In Jim's previous work as the PCPID chair, the recommendations that were made in the PCPID report ultimately spurred the creation of the ABLE Act. So we have an opportunity here to do some really good work, to put forward what really matters to people with disabilities right now in the United States of America, and to really have that heard and to really spur some change around those things we're bringing forward. So I want to thank our committee, all of you. Jim is at the helm, and he is our leader. And all of us, all of you, I just get to sit, whatever, observe, participate, make sure that we at ACL support it, but all of you are going to make this happen. So I appreciate all of you for your commitment, your time, your guidance, your wisdom, and for your hard work to get here and serve here. Lastly, today, I want to point out that we have, I see 217, and the number's going up, people participating virtually, observing virtually. And we had many people submit comments via the public process, the Federal Register. All of that matters. All of that is valuable. Because you, the public, your presence here today, you are us, we are us. Your presence here today is so valid. Your comments help us to do our work. You are appreciated. What you say to us, what you share with this committee, we represent you. So I appreciate your comments. We need your comments. We need your information. We need that. It informs us. It helps us to do our work that the president has assigned this group to do. So I appreciate very much that you are all here today. You really represent and will help us understand what people with disabilities in this country are experiencing so that we can help move this agenda that we determine forward. You know, what we do here today, what this membership does here today, choosing our focus areas, is key. It's key. It is the first step, and it will be the first brick in our foundation to move us towards our final goal, which is a report we will submit to the President of the United States of America. So I feel like that's pretty important. And I'm going to go ahead and let you all get started. Get to it. Do your work. Enjoy.
Great.
I will turn it over to Dave.
Great. Well, thanks, Jill and Allison, for those nice remarks. At this time, I'd like to recognize David Jones, who currently serves as the Director of the Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. David joined the ACL team during the summer of 2020 from the United States Department of Labor. He will share results from our internal PCPID member survey and public input. Also, David will provide an overview of previous PCPID reports published. David?
Great. Thank you, Jim, and hello, everyone. I'm an individual with brown hair, and I'm wearing my reading glasses right now. And today I'm wearing a light blue shirt and an orangey color tie. So thank you, Jim, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to brief you, the committee members, and the public about the recent internal PCPID member survey and the public input received to date. In addition, we wanted to take a moment to reflect on topics that have been surfaced in previously published PCPID reports. Let's go to the next slide. So as it relates to the PCPID member survey, I want to give a little bit of historical context. As background, on May 11th, ACL launched a survey to all of its 33 PCPID members. The survey had 7 questions and was administered through SurveyMonkey. We received 21 responses, resulting in a nearly 64% response rate. Thank you for all that that responded. The results of the survey were shared with the members of the committee earlier this month to support advanced planning for today's meeting. Next slide. There were 4 questions to the survey that were narrative in nature. Question 1 was the following: what was the biggest policy barrier to community living for people with intellectual disabilities? In synthesizing and putting the information together, the responses can be grouped together in the following key areas, and this is not being shared in any particular order. As it relates to citizen services, specifically policy barriers around supplemental security income, the complexity of the application process, and the assets limit for SSI recipients. Second, Medicaid waivers, long waiting lists, and also tribal services not having adequate resources for tribes to provide services to members in their communities. Another policy barrier surfaced related to integration and inclusion, specifically in the areas of home and community-based services and total wraparound services. Policy barriers were also surfaced around accessibility, specifically physical accessibility in rural and suburban areas. Also accessibility related to technology, having access to the most basic assistive technology, and others have noted technology is simply not affordable. Also accessibility barriers related to housing, education, and transportation. And finally, barriers related to the labor shortage, specifically the direct support professional workforce crisis. Question 2, what are the innovative practices within federal, state, or local programs that promote effective service delivery of services and support for people with intellectual disabilities? In putting the information together, the responses can be grouped in the following key categories. Again, these are not being shared in any particular order. Members of the committee reported innovation around systemic partnership, specifically partnership to promote competitive integrated employment by coordinating Medicaid long-term care and vocational rehabilitation services. Another innovation around the partnership between Head Start and the IDEA preschool program, and innovation around community mental health crisis teams. So there were some very key partnerships that members were reporting. Also, a member reported on the innovation around the Hcbs settings rule. Specifically, the person quote the following: in my 40-year career in this field, the closest thing a disruptive innovation is the Hcbs settings rule to expand availability of community-based services that would maximize autonomy and choice for individuals with disabilities. Another area of innovative practices and services also were described related to person-centered planning, money follows the person, development of a self-advocacy curriculum, and the Ticket to Work program. And also innovation related to technology, telehealth specifically. And one person identified actually creating an app that individuals with intellectual disabilities can go and choose the services they want and need, as well as report any injustices they face. Question 3, in synthesize, what has been the biggest impact of COVID-19 pandemic on people with intellectual disabilities? And the leading word and term that was identified was the word isolation. That was repeated many times throughout. And one person noted how the isolation has actually exacerbated the mental health issues that we face. Another area of impact had been around health equity, specifically access to healthcare, including vaccines and PPE. And one member commented, the pandemic exposed the fault lines of our system of care for people with intellectual disabilities. Also, there's been a category on impact of the labor workforce, specifically employment opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities, having earnings, and also for the direct support workforce. And for in the technology realm, impact as it relates to the intellectual disability population having to adapt to this new situation, and the response was mixed. The innovation of telework as being a positive, but remote learning being a negative. In question 4, what are the important issues facing individuals with intellectual disabilities who are part of racial and ethnic minorities, economically disadvantaged communities, and or rural communities? And I would say overall, it's the leading thing that probably surfaced was discrimination and societal perception. One member astutely noted, discrimination faced by people with intellectual disabilities is compounded by the discrimination they face as a result of their skin color or zip code. And also it surfaced related to access to services, equitable access related to education, technology, transportation, housing, healthcare, employment, and Hcbs. Next slide. So for question 5, we did ask, we drilled down further and asked the member to rank the different issues. And they had an opportunity to rank from 1 to 11. And merely this was a way to gauge where the members were currently thinking. And as a result of this exercise, the leading issue identified was home and community-based services. It was followed by employment, education, and fourth was tied between housing and the direct support professional labor shortage. Fifth was health, sixth was transportation, followed by formal and informal community supports, early intervention, childcare, and last, recreation. So it kind of gives you a sense of the numbers. And finally, we asked administrative question, the date of the meeting, that was today's date. And we got, for the last question, how many are interested in being a work group chair, and 11 have said yes. So we look forward to working with them. So next slide. So we also wanted to receive input and feedback, the public sentiment, to help guide the committee's work. And this was very important to ACL leadership and the chair. So on June 14th, ACL launched on its Pcpid webpage an inbox for members of the public to share a comment with Pcpid. As of July 8th, 34 responses were received. These responses were compiled into one document and shared with Pcpid members 2 weeks ago. Please know that we invited a few of those individuals to give remarks today, or if they have reached out to ACL via letter. On behalf of the committee, we want to say sincerely thank you to everyone listening in who provided feedback. And for me, they have been very enlightening to read, and thank you for sharing. And for those listening in that have not had an opportunity to provide feedback, we still welcome your input. You can do so by visiting the Pcpid page on the ACL website. And if we kind of compare the public comment to the member comment, I would say the public sentiment was very consistent with the views of the members of the committee. The leading areas identified were access and accessibility, a very strong parallel, again, related to housing, education, employment, transportation, and healthcare. There was an interesting comment related to technology access and the importance to increase access to AT and augmentative and alternative communication, AAC. And one individual came at it from a protection and advocacy standpoint. He shared an alarming statistic. People with ID are 7 times more likely to be sexually abused than the general population. AAC systems need to include vocabulary related to consent and sexuality. Many people with ID don't have adequate tools to explain their experiences of abuse. And a physician related to technology noted that the telehealth solution had truly been a life-saving service providing much needed medical care to an underserved population. Overall, we received a very strong response from the voices of parents and or sibling caregiver to individuals with intellectual disability. A touching comment was shared from a mother of a son who is now a young adult. She shared the joys and challenges of raising him. She reflected, the amount of work it took for me to raise my son was equivalent to several full-time jobs of which I dedicated my life. I have no retirement, no Social Security benefit, and no alternatives either. We are now suffering after a pandemic that kept my son even more out of society. We also saw comments related to the direct support professional workforce. One commenter noted, many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are exceedingly isolated because HCBS service providers are unable to hire staff to facilitate community exploration and inclusion. And another area related to the bucket of citizen services, SSI for people with developmental disabilities must be reformed or reimagined. Another commenter noted lack of mandatory binding oversight to ensure waiver funds and services are being provided. And another noted the service of strongly advocating that financial literacy be made widely available to persons with ID and their caregivers. So next slide. And so finally, as we wrap up this section, we thought it was, we'll go to the next slide. We thought it was important to take a brief moment to provide insight on historical reports published as the committee weighs what topic to tackle for 2022. These historical reports can be found on the ACL Pcpid webpage. And in 2017, the committee published a report titled America's Direct Support Workforce Crisis, Effects on People with Intellectual Disabilities, Families, Communities, and the U.S. Economy. That report issued 6 recommendations. A sample of 3 of the recommendations were the following: recognizing direct support as a valued career, helping business and organizational leaders find and keep disability service providers, and also provide credentialing for DSP. This week, ACL learned from ODEP, which is part of the U.S. Department of Labor, that it will be releasing a report tomorrow with recommendations on this very same issue. It is stemming from our convening group they established in February 2022 with national experts to identify and make recommendations regarding the DSP crisis. ODEP provided ACL an advanced copy. I had an opportunity to review, and the report will include concrete recommendations in the following areas: DSP career pathways and training, professionalizing DSP as a distinct occupation, and DSP wages and benefits. Similarly, the National Council on Disability will be issuing a report this fall as it relates to establishing a foundation for a successful national Hcbs system that supports a strong direct care workforce. In 2016, the committee published a report on strengthening an inclusive pathway for people with intellectual disability. This comprehensive 85-page report focused on recommendations related to family engagement, education policies, transition, self-determination, and supported decision-making. In 2015, it was all about technology, and it made recommendations related to the field of technology. And in 2012, managed care, long-term service and reports and support. Those recommendations were largely directed to the Center for Medicaid Services. And in 2011, a report was issued related to critical support that promote independent recommendations around various areas, including employment, income support, and long-term services. So this concludes my remarks. I hope this is helpful to the committee. Chairman Brett, I turn it back to you.
Well, thank you, David, and thank you for providing that background. I think it's very helpful to have the latest insights on the committee and public feedback. Based on the information that you just provided, we would like to now take a moment to drill down further to learn more about the leading issues faced by people with intellectual disabilities. So we've invited a very talented panel for them to share their insight. And over the next hour, the panel will share their knowledge and expertise. So I'd like to introduce our panel. To address our home and community-based services, we have Nancy Taylor, who is a senior policy advisor within the administration for community living. To address employment, we have John Butterworth and Jean Windsor from the University of Massachusetts Boston Institute for Community Inclusion. To address education, we have Catherine Fowler from the University of North Carolina, Cato College of Education. And to address housing, Cheryl Larson from the University of Minnesota Institute of Community Integration. And then finally, to address the direct support professional workforce crisis, Amy Hewitt from the University of Minnesota Institute on Community Inclusion. We requested that this panel address what they believe are the three leading takeaways in different areas within a 10-minute segment. And during the hour, please know we'll take a 5-minute break to avoid information overload. And that break will follow the second presentation on employment. We'll also have a Q&A at the end for the committee members. And you're welcome to enter them in the chat. They can maybe be addressed real time in chat response or questions read at the end during Q&A portion. At this time, I would like to recognize Nancy Taylor to share her insights about HCBS.
Thank you very much. And you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you. I'm very pleased to be here. I am an older white woman with blurred background, so nothing clearly to see. I have blonde hair, a tan blouse on with orange and pink flowers, and glasses. I want to thank you for this opportunity. I have interacted with PCID for many decades over the years in various roles that I've had, and I am immensely aware of and respectful of the legacy that PCID has going back to its creation in 1966. Much good has come from it. So whoever's advancing the slide, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is just the things that David asked me to talk about. People served, people waiting, the workforce issue, and quality in HCBS services, some of the high points and items that came out of your survey. Next slide. So this is who is getting served in the system. In home and community-based waivers, there are approximately 1.8 million people, and this data is never current. It takes some time for states to report and CMS to collect this data, but so about 1.8 million people. There are about 267 approved waivers in 46 states. So there are a handful of states that have managed care 1115 waivers, and they're serving people with intellectual disabilities in home and community-based services, but not under the 1915C waivers. So about 267 of them. Most states have more than one. The participants in the Medicaid waiver, and they are in these categories over to the right. States will typically identify these three categories of persons who are eligible for their waivers. So typically, autism spectrum disorder, intellectual disabilities, and or developmental disabilities, or any combination of those, or any one of those singularly. And those serve about 741,000 people, or a big bulk of the folks in services. There are 25 waivers in states that identify children who are medically fragile, who by and large have developmental disabilities. And then there are 17 states who identify children who are socially, emotionally disturbed, often have a social emotional disorder, often, very often, or almost all with a developmental disability. So it is a fragile, vulnerable group of people. And as it says on the bullet on the left, people who have ASD, ID, DD, or medically fragile, or these children with social emotional disorders, make up about 50% of all the people that get home and community-based services, and that other 49% are people with physical disabilities and older adults. But as you can see, the expenditures are higher, 67% higher. And a speculation as to why that might be. Our states do not serve this population as an entitlement. It is a system that has people who generally most in need coming forward. And so I would speculate that as states enroll people into Medicaid waivers from the waiting list, it is by and large people with the more significant disabilities. So the expenditures are higher. Next slide. So I am going to talk about waiting lists. And one point I want to make about waiting list is the waiting list, or whether there is one, is determined not by the federal budget, but by state budgets. The federal agency will match any dollar a state puts up. What holds the system back is the availability of state funds. And I will talk about access to service, which right now is being impacted so significantly by the direct care crisis. And then I want to talk about quality a little bit. Next slide. Okay, thank you to the University of Minnesota, Amy Hewitt, you're going to see slides in her presentation that look a lot like this. The waiting list, so this is the big picture. There are about 7.4 million people who are categorized as having intellectual disabilities or developmental disabilities. Now, every state defines eligibility differently. It's a squishy definition sometimes, but by and large, 7.5 million people. How many people are known to the state? And I will get to getting home and community-based services. The states know or have enrolled about 21%. So most of those people, 18%, are getting home and community-based services, but the states do sometimes provide case management only, or provide very basic state supports, maybe respite care, home-based services of some kind. So you can see that not everybody who might be eligible is getting services. Now, one of the things I get concerned about is when people look at these numbers, they presume 7.4 million people should be getting Hcbs services, and that's not necessarily true. There are people who life is going on, they're fine, and using other adult services or maybe children's services aren't approaching. But we know that probably more than the 1.5 need services. We just don't know what the real waiting list is. And one of the reasons for that is some states don't keep waiting lists. Waiting lists means something different in every state. Many states have people in a home and community-based waiver who are also on the waiting list because they're waiting for more services in a waiver that is more robust. So it is a hard thing to establish what the waiting list is exactly. But next slide. But what the University of Minnesota does provide, and if you're looking this on a screen, it'll probably be beneficial for you to blow it up, but the actual numbers aren't important. What this slide shows is the percentage of people being served in states per 100,000. So what's relevant is the variation across the states that I happen to choose to make this graph. The middle dark blue line going up that says 270 is the US average. And you can see the states, and I don't need to name them, you can look at that later, or you can go on the University of Minnesota's website and do your own comparisons, compare your state to other states. This is a jewel, this database that the University of Minnesota keeps. So what you can compare is the percentage of people per 100 population that each state serves, and you will see great variation. Doesn't necessarily determine what the waiting list is. Next slide. So that's my last, those are my last slides on how many people are getting services, how many people would be eligible, and how states might rank. The next slide I want to talk about has to do with the workforce crisis. And certainly this is the main issue right now when we discuss access, because many states, even when they have money now, are not expanding services because they can't get workers. So workers become the first obstacle to service, right there with the state budgets. So this is a slide that shows, I think, what the issue is. And the issue is that the demand for people to provide care is growing exponentially, and it's growing faster than the number of working age adults available to provide that care. So that the line going up, that orange line from 2006 to 2060, are older adults 85 and older. It is the most rapid growing segment of our population. And what's significant about that is, by and large, everybody needs help after some point in time. Now, these people may not be enrolled in home and community services, but their daughter may not work in the workforce because the daughter decides to stay home with mom, or the granddaughter. So that cohort of 85 and older is a signal that more people will need care. And the blue line are people 65 or older, and you can see that's growing too. So lots of times people need services and supports long before 80, right? In their 60s. And that flat line is the population between the ages of 18 and 64, let's say the working population, and it's fairly flat compared to the need for services. And that is our biggest challenge. So, and it's a challenge because even if you pay higher wages, you can't create more people. The people that are going to be in the workforce have been born already, and we know who they are. And so certainly all the federal agencies are looking at this issue. It's at wages and training and supervision and all the things that would attract and hold on to a workforce, but the number of people remains a challenge. Next slide. And I'm reaching I think I got to my 10 minutes. So this is my last slide. The issue of quality and the Hcbs rule can be overwhelming and confusing. We have transition state plans, we have metrics, we have measures, but the takeaway I think is the most important are the 22 items named in the rule as expected outcomes, rights, and protections. And these remain, they are in the rule. So regardless of whether people do reviews and state plans and transition plans, everyone in a state system needs to expect that the services delivered will meet these 22 standards. And I'm not going to go, you know them, I'm just leave them on the slide. But these 22 items are what's important. And with that, I'm going to end my session. And I think that maybe Amy is next. Oh, John is next. There you go, John.
Thank you, Nancy. And hi, everybody. And my thanks to the committee and to Chairman Brett. It's thrilling to be a part of this conversation. I'm a tall white man with gray hair and glasses. And today I'm wearing a blue button-down shirt and a blurred background, so it's just a fog back there. As we talk about employment, you can go to the next slide. As we talk about employment, work is at the heart of most people's relationship to their community. It touches the structure of our day. It affects our relationships. It affects our resources. And as part of that, it affects our choices, where we live, how we spend our free time. We're going to touch on a few stories from our data that frames some of the challenges in employment. And I think in some ways, one of the biggest challenges in the history of employment is that it's rarely the crisis in people's lives. It's a desire, and you'll see that pretty strongly in a little bit. It's something most people want as part of their lives. But it's different than losing your place to live. It's different than a health crisis. It's different than some of the things that often push investments of resources. We're also in a time where the story about employment is complicated. We're both at a period where we have one of the strongest emphases on employment at both the community level and at a policy level that we've had in a very long time. But as we come out of the pandemic, people have had substantial impact to their job status. And that's had both pros and cons. And we'll talk a little bit about kind of what we've learned and what we think about what we think the implications are for the structure of how we provide supports, both employment supports and other day supports. Next slide, please. We're looking at a graph that shows long-term trends in people's participation in supports for either day activities or employment, day services or employment, over about a 30-year period. And there are two things I'd like you to take away from this. First is we've struggled over those 30 years to meaningfully move the bar on participation in supports for integrated employment. In 2020, we hit about 22%. That's 22% of individuals were engaged in supports that help them to be part of the integrated labor force. That's the highest percent that we've been at since 2001, and the highest number of people we've ever been at engaged in integrated employment, but it's still only 22%. And those percents are going to drop a little bit over the next couple of years as we're able to look at the pandemic. But I think the biggest takeaway I'd like you to think about is the top part of this chart, which is people who are engaged in supports that support them in activities that don't involve paid work. Non-work has always been the largest chunk, the largest part that people participate in. And the challenge we have going forward is how do we create better pathways from non-work to work? How do we prioritize that group of people to realize some of their goals and dreams around employment? Next slide, please. The good news side of that earlier slide, we sometimes think of it as the bad news slide. The good news slide is we know that it's possible. States that have made strong investments in employment, and there's a cluster, this is the percent of people who participated in integrated employment services on a state-by-state basis. And this chart shows variation from as low as 4 or 5% on the very far left to over 80% on the very far right, and a pretty strong cluster of states on the right that are at 40% or higher participating in integrated employment. What this slide says is with the right investments, the right emphasis on employment in policy implementation and strategy, we can support meaningful numbers of people to get to be part of the labor force and can close in on the kind of labor force participation that people without disabilities have. That slide relates directly to the next slide, if you could move again. So what do people tell us? What people tell us is that they want a job in the community. This is from the National Core Indicators Project, and this particular data is from 2018, 2019, and in that year, about 20% of people were working in a community job. 80% did not have a community job. In 2021, which was the middle of the pandemic and is the most recent data we have a job figure drops to about 14%. And that's the early impact of the pandemic on job loss. We are seeing recovery from that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that right now. What's particularly important about this is a little bit over 50% of people who are not working in a community job tell us that they want a job in the community. And our challenge is how well we listen to people and whether we have structures in the kinds of case management supports and person-centered planning that people experience, that we're capturing that and moving it into action steps. So of that slightly over 50% who want a job, only about 40%, and it ranges year to year between about 35 and 40%, only about 35 to 40% say that they have a goal in their service plan for employment. Saying that again, less than half, sometimes as little as a third of people are saying, I really want a job, but people aren't listening to that and making an action plan out of it. We need to learn how to listen better. We need to learn how to value employment differently in our interactions with people. And maybe most importantly, we need to translate those into specific action steps for people. Next step, next slide, I mean. The other piece of this is of course, the pandemic. This slide is from the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services, Community of Practice for Supporting Families. So it's family perspectives on what happened during the pandemic. Individuals with disabilities say very similar kinds of things. Some of the things they've said that they really valued during the pandemic was an increased emphasis on peer-to-peer supports and peer-to-peer self-advocacy kinds of efforts. They really valued the fact that supports and services became more individualized, and instead of showing up at a program for 6 hours of something in the day, because of the pandemic, people were picking and choosing the things they engaged in, a class, an activity, an opportunity to be in the community. We became more person-centered, and that's a message we've heard from both families and from individuals, and a very strong sense that people want more of that in the way that we support them. And that final black box in this slide talks about people learning new skills. Many of those were technology skills. People learned how to communicate using Zoom and build relationships using some of these technologies. It spawned an increased emphasis on people's access to technology and supports around technology. Those lessons learned have helped us to think differently about what supports should look like. And the answers to that question have implications for many of the other things that have already been highlighted, things like the structure of the direct support workforce and strengthening the direct support workforce, people's access to other activities. And I'm going to pass it to my colleague Jean Windsor to kind of take us home with summarizing this into some key points.
Thank you, John. My name is Jean Windsor, and I'm a middle-aged woman with brown hair and blonde highlights. I'm wearing a white blouse with yellow lace trim and a gold chain on my neck. We are at a crossroads in our systems. Currently, we have an employment and day system that is based on a historical group residential model and family care model that makes assumptions about where people will be during the day, which is typically out of their homes, and the type of support and supervision that they require. But over time, we've learned that these assumptions are incorrect and that they limit individuals' opportunities, including opportunities for employment in the community. Most importantly, we know that people want something different. They want supports that are individualized to their goals and needs, that make it possible for them to work, socialize, learn, and participate in their communities. To meet this need, the system needs to let go of historic models and offer supports that are flexible and defined by the person, and most importantly, lead them to opportunities to work in their communities. Next slide, please. In the United States, employment is a basic part of how we connect to many of the important aspects of life, such as relationships and social roles, status, routines, places to go, and activities that allow us for increased opportunities to live the life that we want. Employment impacts where people live, what they do during the day, and the transition from youth to adulthood. As I think about my employment story, and the employment story of so many of my colleagues and peers, I know that becoming employed is an intentional act It doesn't just happen. As John and I were developing this presentation, we wanted to leave you with a few points. And one of them is that whatever the priority the community selects to focus on, the impact of employment on other areas of a person's life must be considered. Next slide, please. Three takeaways about employment. One, the IDD system needs a clear pathway from non-work to work. The IDD system needs to believe that people can work and work in their community with their peers. And the IDD system needs to fundamentally shift how we approach supports and change so that it is responsive to individuals' goals and action steps, as opposed to offering an array of programs designed by state agencies and providers. Next slide, please. John and I would like to thank you for your time today. You can find additional information and resources through the links on this slide and on the next slide. And this slide also contains information on how to contact John and I if you have additional questions outside of this meeting. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Nancy, John, and Jean, for these remarks. And very, very helpful, very informative, and something that I know that we'll be discussing later. So at this time, we're just going to take a quick 5-minute recess. It's 1:02, so can we get back at this meeting in 1:07, if that's possible, in 5 minutes? So let's get back, because we have a busy agenda left for the rest of the afternoon. Oh, yeah. You don't want to see it like this. Yeah. Very. What? Okay. Boom. Okay, those slides are excellent, excellent slides. One minute. Hey, David.
Yes, Jim.
Those slides are terrific.
Oh, good. Thank you. I'm glad you like them.
Yeah, very, very good.
They really are very informative.
And these are the presenter slides. So the
Yes.
presenters you're
Yeah.
hearing, they're doing great work.
We really pulled in some excellent subject matter experts here.
We're ready to go, ready to reconvene. Everybody's been obedient and keeping on schedule, so I just want to thank you for your patience. I'd like to reconvene and recognize Catherine Fowler to share her insights on the issue of education.
Thank you so much. We can actually skip on to the next slide. Thank you. A visual description of me as needed. I am a white middle-aged woman with predominantly gray hair now, curly gray hair. I'm today wearing a red sleeveless top that you can somewhat see, and I have a blurred background, so not much to see there. I really appreciate being part of this group today. I'm honored to be with the committee and honored to be with these other panelists who I read their work and study their reports regularly in the work I do. So it's exciting to get to be part of this. So I appreciate the invitation. Again, my name is Catherine Fowler. I'm a co-director of a U.S. Department of Education project that helps education and vocational rehabilitation agencies specifically, or teachers and VR counselors, better serve middle and high school students, as well as out of school youth, as well as young adults with disabilities. Our center is called the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, the Collaborative, or NTACT-C. So today I am going to be addressing this topic of public education and the public education system and how it is serving students with intellectual disabilities. When I talk about education today, I'm really focusing on the kindergarten to 12th grade plus system, but as a committee, I imagine you all may consider later in your conversations other issues around access and success for individuals with intellectual disabilities in adult education, community, technical, and other four-year colleges as well. So moving on to the next slide. Thank you. Approximately 15% of students in schools have disabilities, and of those students, approximately 13% of those students with disabilities are this category of students with intellectual and or developmental disabilities. So that's in the school system, kind of the numbers that we're talking about. As you look at this slide is simply showing a picture of the most recent information that all states and territories, including the Bureau of Indian Education, report to the federal government on where students with disabilities are served. So where do they receive their instruction? And the big takeaways from this slide, while most students with disabilities, again, across the categories of all disabilities, which is that blue bar on the far left, spend most of their instructional day, if you think about a school day, a little bit more than 5 hours of their day is spent with other students with and without disabilities. So they're integrated into the general curriculum and the regular classrooms. As you look across that graphic, a much higher percentage of students with intellectual disabilities, so that gray bar on the far right of your screen, spend more of their day than other students with disabilities, not with other students without disabilities. So they spend 4 or more hours of their day in more of a segregated classroom setting. That's probably not surprising to anyone who's part of this committee, but it's information that's that we look at in the field of education, we talk a good bit about most and least restrictive environments. And while there are many reasons that students may be in more segregated settings, and lots of those are certainly individualized and good reasons, what we know is that while these data are for students ages 6 to 21, as students get older, that gap between students who are served in classrooms with students with and without disabilities and those in more segregated settings just gets wider. So as students move into middle school and high school, they tend to be in increasingly segregated settings. We know also that students who begin school at early ages, kindergarten, first grade, in more segregated settings are much less likely to ever move out of those settings and be in more integrated settings, and are also much less likely to graduate from high school. These pictures don't say anything about the quality of the teaching that is happening in those classrooms, whether they be in integrated settings or not. Again, we know that there are very good reasons for individuals with disabilities to sometimes be in separate settings, and those are, again, very individualized decisions. But we also know that sometimes the reasons are based on staff availability or space, or this is how we've always done things, or expectations. And so that's why I think this is information that's important for the committee to consider. And there's lots and lots of data and numbers behind these very simplified graphics that I'm happy to share if people are interested in the background of that. The next slide, please. So researchers have been spending decades, and certainly the last 10 years or so, we've been looking a good bit at what are those factors or things that happen while students are in school that may have a relationship to those outcomes that my friends from the Institute for Community Inclusion were discussing, related to employment, being engaged in college, simply being happy as adults. So what are those factors that occur while students are in school that may have a relationship to those things, which we call predictors of post-school success? So on the screen, you'll see for individuals with intellectual disabilities, these are some of those things. So again, many of these probably will not surprise you, but inclusion, again, and instruction, as well as social experiences, both in school and in the community, with individuals without disabilities are predictors of better employment outcomes for individuals as they become adults. Being engaged in career and technical education programs while students are in school, which would include many of these other things like work-based learning experiences, having paid work, understanding careers, preparation for careers. Being involved in those programs while in school is a very strong predictor of better outcomes across multiple areas of adult life for individuals with intellectual disabilities. Some of these factors that you might associate with self-determination or person-centered planning, so autonomy, empowerment, feeling that sense of empowerment, as well as communication skills, so being able to communicate one's wants and needs, and having access to things like David mentioned, assistive technology and augmentative communication so that one can communicate. All of those are also very strongly associated with better outcomes as adults. And then finally, family expectations. So families having the expectation of employment in the community, of integrated employment, having an expectation that their young person might engage in college. Those expectations are associated with actually achieving those outcomes. And we know that those family expectations are often informed or guided by experiences with professionals. Moving on to the next slide. This is just, again, a visual. There are lots of existing pieces of legislation in place that focus on improving outcomes for individuals with intellectual disabilities. The legislation that governs vocational rehabilitation, which is the Workforce Innovation Opportunities Act, WIOA, requires a focus on services for individuals with significant disabilities, as well as services to high school students with disabilities. The Perkins 5 legislation, which regulates career and technical education, requires that a certain amount of funding be spent to serve special populations, which again includes individuals with disabilities. And we know of several states who are really focusing on helping their CTE teachers or their career technical education teachers feel prepared and be prepared to serve students with intellectual disabilities. The Higher Education Opportunities Act has extended the possibility of loans to college students enrolled in inclusive post-secondary programs. And then, of course, as has been mentioned today, the ADA, the Developmental Disabilities Act, the ABLE Act. There's many pieces of legislation that exist that would focus on improving outcomes for individuals with intellectual disabilities. As has been noted, in many states, there are employment first initiatives that are bringing multiple players and partners to the table. So the point of this slide is indicating that there really are many potential partners, and that those partners need to be aware of and inclusive of one another in really moving the needle for individuals with intellectual disabilities. Schools need to be part of the conversations around employment opportunities if individuals are going to be equipped to take advantage of those opportunities as adults. The DD agency and the VR agency both need to be at the table when conversations are being had around Medicaid waivers and specific services that are covered with those. Of course, advocates and allies and family members are essential partners that should be at the beginning of those conversations and not just at the end of those conversations and decisions. So there are dollars and there are policies to rely on, but each of those sets of funds and rules are different for different agencies. And so those partners have to be willing and able to find common ground and some flexible solutions. And then finally, the next slide. In closing, just focusing on these sort of big takeaways in the areas of education. So coordination within an organization or within a school building across providers, as well as, again, that interagency coordination is critical. Work-based learning, whether that be paid or unpaid, paid is certainly better, in authentic and real work integrated settings, beginning as young as possible, are also key to success for students and then young adults with disabilities. And then providing young, very young children with intellectual disabilities on through adolescence and young adulthood with opportunities and ways to use their voices to contribute to conversations, to express their interests and their needs and really be part of the decisions that are being made about them is also critical. So those are sort of the three big takeaways in the area of education. Each of those require training for staff, hiring of staff, which has already been talked about, the challenges there, making time and space for planning and meetings and allowing for those flexible solutions and scheduling, which all requires some commitment. So the next slide. These are just some resources that are available if you all are interested as the committee digs further into your work. The first one in particular might be of interest to this group. And then finally, the next slide is how you can be in touch with me. If you have any questions or follow up around the data that I was mentioning or any of that research, I'm more than happy to connect with you on that. Thank you again for having me. And with that, I believe I turn it over to Sherry Larson, who's going to discuss housing and residential services. So thank you again.
Hi, my name is Sherry Larson. I'm from the University of Minnesota, and I am a middle-aged white woman with glasses and blonde hair. I have a red background. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and participate in this meeting. Next slide. I want to talk about three key issues in the area of housing. One is supporting people who live with family members and supporting family members of people who are living with them, or people with IDD. The second thing I want to talk about is access to support. And third, I want to talk about housing more generally. I'm going to give you some information about where we're at as a country in the area of housing to help inform your decisions. Next slide. So in the area of supporting people who live with their families, next slide. This is what we know about where people who get services through state IDD agencies live. About 60% of those people live with their family members, 11% live in their own home, 5% live with a host or foster family, 16% live in a group home of 6 or fewer people, and only 9% live in an institution. Most people who don't get services also live with family members. However, states are not the same. One other point, 9% of people live in an institution today, and those institutions are downsizing and closing. Next slide. This is just a picture of how our system has changed since 1982 when the home and community-based waiver was first started. The number of people in Medicaid institutional settings, ICF, IID settings, have gone down by half since 1982. There are still 70,000 people living in what Medicaid calls institutions. The other big part of this picture is the number of people getting services in home and community-based settings went from basically 0 in 1981 to almost 900,000 in 2018. Next slide. One of the biggest reasons why the number of people getting services has changed is because more families, more people who live with family members are getting supports. In 1998, there were only 325,000 people living with family members who are getting supports. Today, there's almost 800,000 people living with family members and getting those supports. And the light blue bars on the top of this chart show the growth in the number of people who live with their family members who get a home and community-based services waiver to fund the services that they get. The driver of the increase in services is definitely provision of waiver-funded services to people living with family members. Next slide. Next thing I want to talk about is access to supports, and there's some overlap between this and what Nancy talked about. Next slide. So I won't go over the slide on the right because Nancy's already talked about that. What I want to point out here is that state IDD agencies serve about 46% of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities and only about 11% of children. And that's because children are entitled to a free appropriate education and get much of their service needs met through the public school system, whereas adults don't have entitlements to services. And so the access to services mostly through state IDD agencies. As Nancy mentioned, waiting lists are a big issue. We know that there are more than 200,000 people who are living in their own home or with a family member who are not receiving and were waiting for waiver funded supports. Final point on this slide is the capacity to develop this slide to estimate how many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities there are in the United States is actually very impaired. We know we have a lot of good information every year about how many kids have intellectual or developmental disabilities from our national health surveys, but we don't have updated information about the number of people who are adults who have intellectual and developmental disabilities. This is a problem that ACL has been aware of and is working on, but we really have to do better. The prevalence estimates that I used to create this slide are from 1994, 1995. Next slide. So Nancy also talked about this. There's huge differences. This is for adults. There's huge differences in whether you get services or not, depending on what state you live in. Just to put it into concrete terms, people with IDD who live in New York are 10 times more likely to get long-term supports or services from state IDD agencies than people with IDD in Nevada. And people in New York are 4 times more likely than the average people in the average state to get those supports. Next slide. So I think the most important thing and to talk about in the area of housing is supporting individualized services. Next slide. Individualized supports are required by the home and community-based services waiver. We know from research that people in smaller settings have more choice, are more satisfied, and have better outcomes. The settings that we talk about that are individualized are a person's own home, a host home or foster family home, the home of a family member, or small group settings where 3 or fewer people getting supports share a home or apartment. Next slide. This is just another picture showing how the system has changed in terms of people living in small settings. We already looked at people who live with their family members. This is everybody else. So there has been almost no change since 1998 in the number of people who live in group homes with 4 or more people. Where the changes happened is the increase, more than doubling the number of people who live with a host or a foster family or live in a group setting with 3 or fewer people getting services. The other place where it's grown is people living in their own home. We've gone from 62,000 people living in their own homes to 153,000 people who are living in their own homes getting supports from the state IDD agency. The size of the settings are getting smaller, but there are families who want to build new group settings where lots of people with IDD live together. And this is a big issue that we need to be aware of. States are struggling with this as they implement the home and community-based services rule. Next slide. So my takeaway challenges, number one, during the pandemic, I got emails asking me how many people live in group homes and how many staff are in those group homes. And I was able to answer that question. And the reason the question came up is they wanted to provide personal protective equipment for people who lived in group homes. But what that misses is the people who live in their own homes or with family members and get supports in those settings. We need to not focus only on people who live in group settings. In fact, it's a very small proportion of all people who get services. Remember that people living in their own homes with their family members or in other individualized settings should be the priority in terms of describing and discussing things. Secondly, access to supports varies within and across states. It's an ongoing issue. The Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services have done a lot to try to encourage states to provide services to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but different states have different policies and different ideas about how many people they want to serve. And so there are just big differences for people who live in different states. Finally, as we move in our thinking about housing and residential services, we have to be thinking more about housing itself, because when you think about a system that's institutional, the place that you live comes with the service, or the service comes with the place you live. But when you're talking about individualized supports, that means each person getting, or each group of people getting those supports have to find support affordable, accessible housing. And that is a very significant limitation. I think I saw for every 100 people with who are very low income and needed accessible, affordable housing, there were only 37 units available. It's a huge access issue, and it really will affect people with intellectual and developmental disabilities who want to move into their own home. Final slide. So there's a lot of resources available that you can check out to know more about what I'm talking about. The first one is our project that tracks what's happening in residential services. I won't talk any more about that. The next slide. My contact information is on this slide. Thank you for your time and attention.
Amy?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Amy Hewitt, and I direct the Institute on Community Integration at the University of Minnesota. I'm a middle-aged woman with long brown hair, and I'm wearing a black t-shirt today and have on white glasses. So I was asked to talk to you about the direct support workforce, and just to make sure we're on the same page about who we're talking about. These are the individuals that are hired either by individuals with disabilities themselves or their families if they're in a self-directed model, or the staff that work in group homes and employment programs, including employment in the community. So they spend their workday doing whatever it takes to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Next slide, please. And can you click all the little boxes? So this problem is not new. In fact, you heard from David earlier that a report to the president was made in 2017. One of the very first articles or publications I worked on was something called Opportunities for Excellence, which was a report to the president written in 1996 about the workforce. So this is not a new problem, although often it gets talked about as, oh, we're in crisis. And the reality is we've been in crisis with this workforce for nearly 30 years. And this slide sort of gives you that idea of why. We pay low wages, benefits are not affordable for the average direct support professional, even if they're offered to them. People get very limited training and development. I tend to do the fallback on 40 hours of overtime, but these days we're lucky if they get 40 hours of orientation and training. There are very few career advancement opportunities in the field, because your choice is to become a supervisor or a manager, and there aren't very many of those positions proportionate to direct support roles. So all of these issues result in us having a really hard time finding people and retaining people who are high quality employees. And that then results in lower quality services and poor outcomes for people who receive services. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to go through this data really fast. It gives you just a contemporary look of when we say challenges, what do we mean by that? We know that about 70% of direct support professionals are the primary wage earners in their home. We know that they're disproportionately women. In a more recent study, 84, that tends to fluctuate somewhere between low to high 80%. It's a female dominated profession. We know that there are a disproportionate number of Black, Indigenous, people of color in the workforce, about 55.5%. We know wages are low. The mean wage in 2022, published by the National Core Indicators Staff Stability, was $13.61. So reflect again, if you're the primary wage earner in your home today, given inflation, given the realities, what it's like to live on $13.61 an hour. As a result, just about half of direct support professionals rely on some other form of public assistance, whether that is health insurance or housing or energy assistance or food assistance. The majority of this workforce are full-time, 69%, but it's a pretty large percentage of part-time workers, 31%, who work in this field. Perhaps one of the more difficult numbers on this slide is that we have a 40% turnover rate according to staff stability data. And that means that 40% of the staff who were there on January 1 of any given year are not there on December 31st of that same year. So we don't have stability at all in this workforce. We know that 17% of the people who leave during that calendar year are terminated from their positions. That means we're hiring people who we shouldn't be hiring. And we have about anywhere from a 12% vacancy rate in full-time positions to 16% in part-time positions. My guess is that these numbers are higher, and when the next round of data comes out that is inclusive of what happened during COVID-19, we will see that the vacancy rates are likely a bit higher. And then another, I think, really critical piece of looking at who this workforce is, we have an educated workforce in this industry where 73% have some education beyond high school. And yet we talk about this workforce as if they're an uneducated entry-level workforce. It's a highly stressful job that requires quite a bit of skill. Next slide, please. So as I said, this problem has been going on for a long time. If you look at PHI's data, one of the statistics that they put out, and this was before the pandemic, that by 2028, we will need 8.2 million new employees coming into the various direct support worker roles. So that could be a PCA, personal care assistant, home health aide, direct support professional across all populations. But that's an alarming number that we need to be able to fill positions of this many people. Next slide, please. So then COVID hit, and it really disrupted, as you know, lives of people with disabilities, lives of the staff, lives of the families, lives of all of us in this country and across the world. We collaborated with the National Alliance on Direct Support Professionals to do a series of studies. We're on the fourth wave now. That data is in, and now we have to analyze it. But this represents some of the findings of what happened to this workforce during COVID. Only 30% of the direct support professionals that responded to our survey reported that they earned any extra money working as essential workers. And of those that did, they got on average $1 to $2 an hour more. There were many disparities evident in our study regarding wages and household incomes, meaning that Black and African American DSPs were much more likely to have wages that were lower than other categorical groups of DSPs. The DSPs experienced a lot of disruption and change during their time during COVID. They had to work different schedules, different places, different patterns, different types of work. Many moved to working online and things that they never had to do before, and extreme numbers of hours worked. And this is where I get, it makes me feel like it's a bit, we're so far beyond a crisis. We're at this place of what I call systemic exploitation, where we're depending on this workforce that sometimes is working 60, 80, 100 hours a week, and we could not possibly get by without them doing that. 54% of DSPs said that they had a decline in their work-life status, meaning how that was working for them. And perhaps the most alarming information we receive from these surveys are that about half have physical and emotional burnout, 47% anxiety, and many have sleep difficulties. Next slide. In terms of mental health support, I think it's really critical that as an industry, we're looking at ensuring employee assistance programs exist, that we have health plans that are robust enough that they have mental health coverage for this workforce, wellness training and support programs inside of their employment, and then looking at financial childcare and caregiver community connections. Next slide. And then I'll just end with these recommendations that we need to make sure that DSPs are recognized as essential workers, that we identify and eliminate wage disparities. We have to figure out the professional recognition and wage equity and pay that is correlated with skill, as well as figuring out how to reduce and eliminate wage compression, because new hires are coming in at almost what people have worked for 20 years make. And then also lessons learned from other female-dominated positions. Next slide. That's my contact information. I guess my 3 walkaways are this. The problems aren't new. We've been seeking changes for over 25 years. They're not going to get any easier. In fact, they'll get worse, just based solely on demographics. There are solutions, and we know what they are. We just need the legislative will, both at the state and national levels, to make it happen. And there's no way you can meet goals related to many of the topics that were presented to you today, whether it's employment, housing, home and community-based services, transportation, if we can't figure out how to stabilize the workforce. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Catherine and Cheryl and Amy, for sharing their insights. Again, just speaking for myself, very, very informational and very informative for me. So thank you. At this time, we'd like to open it up to the full committee to have an opportunity to ask questions. So just note that in the chat, if there are questions in the chat, Census can read the questions, and if you have your hand raised, they also can help unmute the lines for members to ask the questions.
Yes, we will start with a question for Amy from Joseph. This question says, as the primary author of the 2017 Pcpid report, you and your team identified 10 thoughtful recommendations. Do you have any information on how many of them, if any, have been implemented in any meaningful way?
That's a good question, Joe. I looked at that. I looked at both of the previous PCPID reports in preparing for this, and I would say we've made a little tiny bit of progress from the 2017 report. We're doing better at using technology as a mechanism to assist supports, and we're doing better at creative models of support, so self-direction, shared living, all those things that Sherry talked about. So those are two areas where I think we've made a dent. The other ones, not so much. I had a lot of hope with the Build Back Better legislation that we would really finally get moving on the workforce pieces, but by and large, all of those recommendations still stand, and we have a lot of work to do to address and meet them.
Thank you, Amy. I will be unmuting someone to ask a question, and I would just like to clarify, if you are asking a question in the chat, please specify who you would like the question to be directed to.
Yes, thank you for a wonderful presentation, everyone. This is to whoever, I'm not sure whether it should be for Amy or for Nancy, but my question is around the DSP crisis as well as the home community-based services. If we let's say people to get into the community more readily, and we don't have DSPs, people are leaving left and right. How can we, and I say we because I am a person with disability, how can we live in the community on a successfully, or even work or go to a school in the community? And I'll give you a perfect example that just happened to me just within the last month. My DSP has left, and there are things that both my husband and I need help with, shopping or whatever, and we don't have anyone to help us with that.
I'll take a stab, Liz, at answering your question. I think you're just illustrating exactly what the problem is. We sort of talk about this workforce as if there's always backup, but we're at this place where there's not backup. And I don't know, I know it's happening across all states. In Minnesota, 170 group homes have had to close because they cannot find staff. And one of the things that I know from my personal experience is that before my family self-directed, we were getting in-home support. So that's all the families that Sherry talked about, where people are on the waiver and they're getting support in their family home. Well, those families, those individuals aren't prioritized when you have such a limited number of staff and somebody has to have supervision. What tends to happen is the group home hours get worked and families and individuals end up with less support and less respite. So these are really real impacts on people who are receiving services, and we keep sort of just moving forward as is, and we really need to address the workforce if we want to really meet the promises that we've made in all of the legislation that's been passed in this country around community living and supporting people in the community.
Hi, Amy. This is Jim Brett, the chairman.
Hi, Jim.
That these are professional staff support, professional, and give them an average wage of $13.61, where they can work at Dunkin' Donuts at $16 plus tips, work at Amazon and other retail outlets at $21, $22, and yet we say these people are professional. There's something missing here. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, I think there are two ways I would respond to that, Jim. One is our society doesn't really know who this workforce is, and we don't have requirements for their education and training. And so all the pieces, yet we know that the skills that they have to have in order to do this well put them at a professional level in this country. The way in which we drive wages up requires legislative action. And that just hasn't happened in most states. It's happening in some. There are some states, Rhode Island had a consent decree after a Department of Justice lawsuit against that state. Their wages are now up to $18 an hour and moving towards 20 pretty soon. But that took a lawsuit and a legally agreed consent decree to make happen. So it comes down to the elected officials and our neighbors and convincing people about who these workers are, and then taking that brave step of creating credentials and career paths that lead to higher wages. If you look at most female dominated industries, that's how it happened. You know, it's how teachers were able to get a reasonable salary, how nurses, etc. They require a credential, and we don't do that.
I will be now unmuting Sean to ask a question. Sean?
Yes, first of all, I just want to say thank you to everyone that did a presentation. Y'all was excellent. This go to the education department. We all know that when it's come to the disability community, that education is always not in the front of the line for those that have intellectual disability. And as you hear on the mark, that's when segregation start. So what is some of your recommendation to stop the segregation? What is your recommendation for the community? And I have a other question for the home and community based, but I will want to hear from the education department first. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. This is Catherine Fowler. I wish I had a magic solution to that. I think it's a little bit like what Amy was talking about, getting lots of people talking about this issue and knowing those data and knowing the information that students who are in more segregated settings, or when those decisions are just maybe casually made when students are in kindergarten, first grade, just simply based on a diagnosis, but not looking at the individual needs of that student, that tends to predict the trajectory of that student, to not have the same opportunities that students might have who are in classrooms with students without disabilities. And so I think having that information and being able to share that in local communities, and it definitely is a it's one of those local and state kind of conversations at the same time, having this conversation nationally, and then really where the change happens typically is at the local level. So it would be interesting if this committee thinks that that's important, but I know there's lots of issues to tackle. I don't know if that really answers your question, but it's a challenging one. Having the data about the outcomes is probably a helpful place to start.
Cause I know when I was in public school, I was in a segregation classroom, and when I went to a regular classroom, the kids you used to pick on me and stuff. So like in Pennsylvania, for example, we just passed a bill to teach kids about the disabilities in from K to 12. So do you think that will work on a tongue tie? Do you think that will work on a natural level?
I do. The landscape certainly is changing, and there are certainly students, if we look, these data were the most recent data. If we look back, students with intellectual disabilities are more and more in classrooms with students without disabilities. So it is changing over time. It is slow changing, but that is shifting. And what you mentioned about disability awareness and students being taught about people with disabilities and being again in classrooms and having friends who are people with and without disabilities, that landscape is certainly changing. I think having individuals with disabilities serving in leadership positions on committees and being, visibly engaged, like this work that's happening today and through this committee, and happening again at the local level as people, as advocates, participate in those decisions. So I do think that can be, again, from certainly a national push, as well as work that happens locally to influence. It's difficult to influence local curricula, that's for sure, from a national level, but there certainly can be information that's shared from a national, from a committee such as this, that's shared down to the local level.
Thank you. I will now be reading a question from Jordan. This question is for John, Jean, and Catherine. We know that when folks start in segregated settings, they are more likely to live a life of segregation. I'm wondering if there is solid data showing a direct correlation between meaningful inclusion in schools and people having a job in the community.
Catherine, a lot of that's your data. This is John. So do you want to take a shot at that?
Sure, I can. I mean, it was a little bit in the slide that I shared. There is some data. I wouldn't say it's the strongest data in the world, but there is research to indicate that students who, as we've just talked about, are included more with students without disabilities. There's a relationship to better employment outcomes. There's based on a couple of studies, so it's not a really strong line, as you were asking about, Jordan, but there is certainly some data that suggests that. And I don't know if John or Jean have more to say.
I think I'd add just a little more specifically, there's similar to what Catherine said, it's not, there's a fair amount of data that shows a relationship between people's work experiences while they're in school and work experiences post-school. And the expanding focus on work-based learning is an important part of addressing that. But Catherine also mentioned when she was talking, the hope that people would not just have work-related experiences, but have paid employment experiences as part of their, while they're still school age, as an important part of a pathway to adult life.
Thank you. We have time for about 1 or 2 more questions, so I will be asking Tia if you could unmute.
Yes, my question is, Catherine and John Butterworth, are you seeing more times where people with disabilities in school are doing transition early so that they can focus on what they're going to be doing after they're done with school? And also, John, to talking about career development. I don't know, people are talking a lot about jobs, but we need to make sure that people are actually looking at careers for people with disabilities. Is there any movement along that line? I know that there is some people doing transition a little earlier, but like it's still not far enough along that they're doing it at earlier age so that they get some opportunities, like you said, to do job shadowing, to do different job opportunities, to focus on if they want to have a career or not, what kind of things that they're interested in. And then for John, people with disabilities actually working on career development.
John, you want to go first this time?
Sure. Tia, I love the fact that you started with focusing on career development, you're absolutely right. We need to be thinking about career paths and continued growth. I think too often in the supports we provide to people is once they've found a job, we figure we're done and don't keep the push going, the pressure going to think about advancement. It needs to be embedded in support planning. It needs to be embedded in people's goals and the kinds of experiences they have. So, things like continuing education and things like that can't just stop because someone has a job. That's something those are things that are part of a career path. I do think those experiences are beginning to happen earlier. We've got a legislative basis for pre-employment transition services that create some of those. I think we still fall short in authentic work-based learning experiences and paid employment experiences as part of that period. And I think the other place we fall short is even when we talk about starting transition earlier, for most of us, transition starts when we're kids. People talk to us about what we want to do when we grow up. We have expanding responsibilities. We begin to volunteer with our family and then on our own through other kinds of outside of school activities. I think we need to be paying attention to these conversations from early childhood, really, and I think that's a challenge. Getting to a point where that's a dialogue that starts that early.
I would just add, Tia, that there are states that have changed the federal requirement is that transition planning in schools must begin at 16. About half the states have policies that it begins earlier, usually 14. And then there's a handful of states, DC, South Carolina, there's a few that begin transition planning at 12 or 13. So there is, I would say, some momentum towards, shifting that planning earlier. And John mentioned about pre-employment transition services and that happening for students earlier. So there's definitely there's momentum for that earlier transition work, but I agree with John that, we do things like career day when children are in kindergarten, and then particularly for students with disabilities, we just drop off on that conversation, it goes away. And so I think we really need to be intentional about transition, what I call transition focused education from the beginning, I would say from birth. So that's just a really important part of all of this.
It's just because a lot of times kids with disabilities don't start learning about careers and doing that discovery and what kind of career that they would be looking at or what even a career is. I think it needs to be out there more to have people with disabilities participate in those kind of ways that they can talk to people about what they're interested in, what their likes are. Do they want to work part-time, full-time, things like that, so that they can get some idea of whether they like that job, if they want to make it a career, or if they're interested in something else along the way.
Right.
Yep.
Agreed.
Okay, I just want to try to stay on schedule, and we've given you an awful lot of information in a short period of time. I realize that. So why don't we decompress and spend 15 minutes and just take a break, and we'll be back here about 2:17, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's perfect.
I'd like to now call the meeting to order so we can resume our committee business. And let me just begin by saying thank you to my fellow members for your patience and understanding and allowing us to stay on schedule. As I stated earlier, it's a well-packed agenda, and we really want to make sure that those items that are included in the agenda are addressed today. So again, just thank you for your understanding. At this time, we'd like to hear from members of the public to share their insights with the committee. And for this segment, we've identified 5 individuals who previously submitted comments to the PCPID inbox or ACL. For all those listening in who submitted comments, please know we are in receipt of the full comments received and are appreciative of you taking the time to share your perspective. Due to meeting time constraints, we're allotting approximately about 3 minutes for each of the 5 individuals to read their statements or an excerpt of their statements to surface existing barriers or solutions identified in the communities across the country. I'd like to begin by recognizing Joanne Nicholson from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Thank you, Chairman Brett. It's a privilege to meet with you and the committee today, and we're grateful for the opportunity. I am a mother and a grandmother, a white, mature woman with gray hair, wearing a white t-shirt and glasses. And I'm here today to talk with you about the work of my team on the issues facing parents with IDD and their families. From our perspective, family is at the heart of our relationship with the community. And so we wanted to take advantage of talking about this. Parents with IDD and their families are a vulnerable, underserved population, and we're talking about those individuals who are already parents and those who want to become parents. We focus in particular on the intersection of IDD with behavioral health conditions, given the estimates that half or more of individuals with IDD also live at some point with mental health challenges. With funding from the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute, we recently held a series of Ideas Lab workshops with stakeholders, mothers with IDD, providers, policymakers, researchers, to highlight mothers' experiences and needs and develop an agenda for research, policy, and practice solutions. Workshop participants underscored challenges in service availability and accessibility, the inattention to diversity among both mothers and providers, and the potential for traumatic experiences in the context of service delivery, which contributes to distrust of providers and reluctance to engage in services. Workshop participants provided recommendations for interventions in the area of maternal and child health, perinatal consultation, specialized doula services, home visiting programs. Participants underscored the notion of support for maternal employment, a focus on self-advocacy, self-care, and healthy relationships, and the potential benefits of peer support, which were also highlighted, along with the need for improvements in the training of providers and facilitated system navigation. I would suggest that parenting and family life sit at the center, at the intersection of all of the emerging issues you discussed earlier: housing, employment, education, and workforce. The good news is that parenting and family life for parents with IDD also fits well into current federal priorities, which I think can be leveraged on their behalf. For example, community-connected health and community inclusion, digital technology and virtual engagement and services, maternal child health and mental health. Our stakeholders want to move past consideration of who will be taking care of them to focus on the fact that many want to and are actually taking care of others. Our efforts should focus not on just fixing individuals with IDD, but creating relevant policy and accessible, effective systems and services, solutions that optimize their capacity to achieve meaningful life goals, including those for parenting and family life. So thank you again for this opportunity to present this perspective on behalf of our team and stakeholders.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. Now we're going to recognize Rebecca Schonecker from the state of North Carolina. Is Rebecca with us?
Jim, I see that she is under attendees and not under panelists to Team Census. Is there a way that we can get Rebecca as a panelist? And Jim, you may want to circle back to Rebecca and go to maybe the next person to resolve that.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, we're just going to move on until we can address the Rebecca situation, but I'd like to recognize Laurie Robinson from the state of New York. Is Laurie with us?
It looks like she says that she's here, but she is not on as a panelist.
Okay.
If we promote you to panelist, please accept the promotion.
Hi, this is Rachel Chandler. I think I can go because I think I'm promoted as panelist, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Hold on, let me just get
Rachel's from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
muted myself. Hi, everyone. So my name is Rachel Chandler. I am a white female in my 30s. I have red hair and I am wearing a black shirt and glasses. I am also sitting in a motorized wheelchair. I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I have cerebral palsy. I currently work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. People with disabilities are a large population whose needs often get pushed aside. The intellectual and developmental disability community's needs may also get pushed aside because we are not seen as smart or people don't think we know what our needs are. This is just not the case at all. Many people are wanting to plan for their future, but they just don't know where to get the resources to do that. Those resources need to be more readily available and easy to access. Resources such as assistance with Social Security, employment opportunities, access to public transportation, and much more. Home and community-based services continues to be an area that the disability community is crying out that our needs are not being met. We need qualified caregivers, and to get qualified caregivers, we need to pay them more. I hope these issues and others get addressed during your committee meetings. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Have we been able to access Rebecca?
Jim, I think we're still working on that, but we do have Laurie
Okay,
Robinson.
and Laurie, do we have Laurie?
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Okay, Laurie.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your service on this committee and this opportunity to speak. I am a researcher and service provider in Rochester, New York. I am a white Latina with light brown hair, blue eyes, wearing a light blue shirt with dark blue sweater. I would like to highlight the existing gaps in services for people with IDD who are aging. Similar to the general population, people with IDD are living longer lives. Research conducted at the University of Minnesota estimates that there are approximately 7.5 million people with IDD in the United States, the majority of whom are under age 21. At this time, we do not know how many are over the age of 65, as there is still no national database or registry for people with IDD. As people with IDD get older, aging in place is not always possible due to changes in physical and sometimes cognitive function. There are currently not enough community residences or group homes, and waiting lists exist for residential services in most, if not all, states. When medically necessary, nursing homes are not always a good option for older people with IDD, as most staff do not have training or working knowledge of IDD. Similarly, most healthcare practitioners, such as doctors and nurses, do not have training or working knowledge of either geriatrics or IDD. Training and education on older adults with IDD must be included in the curriculum for all healthcare providers and for staff of long-term care facilities. The shortage of support staff across the country limits services for all people with IDD in all settings, whether they live at home with a family caregiver, in a community residence, or on their own. They all need support staff, and all support staff need to be paid a salary that they can live on. If we do not compensate direct support professionals as they deserve, our field will continue to experience high rates of turnover and chronic understaffing, which impacts the services provided to all people with IDD, but especially older adults with IDD who require more assistance with ADLs as they age. Please add aging to your strategic and/or long-term plans. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Great, thank you. And do we have Hugo Dwyer?
Yes.
Excellent. From the great state of New York.
Hi, my name is Hugo Dwyer. I'm Executive Director of VOR, a Voice of Reason. My organization stands for high quality care and human rights for all people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I'd like to thank the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities for holding this forum and for representing all people with intellectual disabilities. This is a very, very diverse community. We're defined by people at one end who have high aspirations. We're defined at another end for people who have extremely high needs. We need to make sure that everything we do encompasses the needs and the desires of all the people involved in this community. I'd like to see everybody in this community. I'd like to know that everybody in this community does support opposing points of view, because that's what makes us a real community. My organization is very much in support of home and community-based services, but we also support the ICF system. A lot of our family members, like my brother, were not well supported in anything but an ICF. And that's part of our social fabric, is part of our social safety net. And until we do better, I think it's wrong for the people who support closing them to take away what works for other people. Same can be said for employment. We support the transformation of competitive employment, but we also understand that there are some people who are unlikely ever to be accommodated by businesses. They work well in an environment with a job coach who's also a DSP, who can look after their challenges like epileptic seizures, needing a diaper changed, or behavioral issues that are not going to play well in competitive employment situations. We should be supporting all forms of care and all opportunities for people with IDD, because we want to make lives better. We want people to live the best possible lives. We want them to be able to change in their life. If their circumstances improve, they should get better, more integrated opportunities. If they have bigger challenges, they should be able to move into a program that helps meet those challenges. So this is what we are asking. I think my recommendation for this topic is that we discuss the direct support professionals. That's the crisis that meets all of our needs. We can't do housing without people to work in the housing. We can't do day programs without people working in them. None of this is anywhere without direct support professionals. And that's the immediate need for us to address. And I would like to thank this committee for the time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hugo. Have we been able to locate Rebecca?
Yes, I am here.
Ah, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. I apologize for that.
That's okay. No, good.
Good afternoon. My name is Rebecca Schonecker. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a white female in her 40s with brown hair, glasses, and a green shirt. I'm an educator, a family advocate, and most importantly, a parent to a child with intellectual disabilities in North Carolina. I'm speaking to express my extreme concerns surrounding education, the lack of mental health and crisis services, and a systematic needs assessment. In my personal experience, particularly since COVID, I come face to face with a continual lowering of expectations for individuals with intellectual disabilities, rather than continued research, planning, learning, and efforts to make each individual as independent and competent as possible. Students with intellectual disabilities have fallen even further behind in school, widening the gap between them and their typically developing peers in every way. It is crucial that there is accountability for schools to provide quality compensatory services for each student that missed educational opportunities due to COVID. Additionally, there is a lack of social skills, life skills, functional skills, and vocational skills being taught and executed and being executed in real life situations. We start too late. VR skills cannot start at age 16, 17, 18, and higher in the schools and in the community. Individuals with intellectual disabilities require additional time and practice to hone these skills in order to be functional members of our society. As you have heard, there's a lack of staffing for jobs that work with individuals with intellectual disabilities. And it's true, these positions are not paid a living wage. I firmly believe we will never find quality care to stay in long-term positions without addressing this urgent need. Furthermore, we need a plan to advertise and effectively recruit for these positions. Anyone can tell you about the opportunity to be a foster family. How many average Americans can tell you what a QP, qualified professional, DSP, direct support professional, or AFL, alternative family living, is or does? The student teaching opportunity, for example, is a way to match quality candidates with future job openings. Likewise, a partnership between the state provider agencies and college prep programs is a simple way to locate staff that are already interested in the field and need the experience as part of their training and college prep program. Most notably, I would like to mention the lack of mental health and crisis services available to individuals with intellectual disabilities and their families. A lack of knowledge, training, services, service providers, and opportunities in general to receive these services. This is a true emergency. We need a plan to survey individuals, families, provider agencies, DSPs, educators, and all stakeholders to discover the current needs and the services that are in place to address these needs. And I urge you all to remember that just because there are services doesn't mean they are being delivered. They're being delivered effectively, or that they're contributing to the individual's future needs and goals. This concludes my comments, and I thank you all for your time and the important work that you are doing.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. At this time, it's an opportunity for all of my fellow commission members to talk about what you believe is the leading issue that needs to be addressed by the PCPID and why. So if we can just hopefully get some feedback from my fellow members here, that as you give your thoughts and views and suggestions, just be mindful, we're trying to get as many members to participate in the limited amount of time we have. So if we don't exceed a 5-minute range, that would be very, very helpful. Again, just to ensure as many members have a chance to speak. So again, the floor is open for members to nominate a topic.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay just to speak or?
Sure, absolutely.
Sure.
Paul?
Yeah, thank you. And first of all, thank you to you and the ACL staff for putting together this great first public meeting for us. It's been a great conversation. Really appreciate the presentations as well as the public comment. Just 2 thoughts on topics. Just want to throw them out there. One is concerning the need to sort of update Social Security and Medicaid, both in terms of the eligibility in general for folks with intellectual disabilities, but also in terms of what's termed as the marriage penalty that's sort of inherent in both programs right now. I can discuss this more. I'm sure many folks are aware of this right now, but both programs in terms of their eligibility sort of put a barrier to folks who rely on them, particularly people with intellectual disabilities, from getting married. They put a barrier that's really unnecessary and unfair. So that's one topic. But another topic, and I don't know if this has ever been done before by the committee, but I think it would make sense based on everything we've heard today, plus all of our experience, to revisit the workforce report that was done 5 years ago. As was noted, there were several good recommendations in that report that have yet to be carried out. And so it probably, from my perspective, makes sense to look at this, 5 years later. Has anything changed? What's changed, good, bad, or otherwise? And where we need to go, because it's been said by multiple folks today, workforce is at the center of so much in terms of the life of folks with intellectual disabilities, in terms of health and safety, in terms of housing, in terms of employment across the board. So I would just throw that out there as a idea for consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Somebody had their hand raised. Yeah, go ahead. Jim?
Yeah, my number one topic is employment.
Uh-huh.
I think that is the basis of a tremendous amount of activities and abilities and accessible opportunities. So I really want the committee to really focus in on that. And obviously healthcare. If you're not well enough to go to work, you need some health, whether it's dental or whether it's a physical problem. I appreciate all the speakers today, and I didn't disagree with anything that any of them said, but from my point of view, those are the two most important things. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Is it
Don't be
okay if
shy.
I jump in, or are we waiting for people?
No, that's fine. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thanks. And thank you, Chairman Brett. Thank you for all the wonderful speakers. It's been a really interesting meeting, and I'm just honored to participate. My thoughts are, all the speakers today, they were all such important topics, and I just kind of go back to a lot of the comments I think Liz had made both in the chat and when she spoke up, as well as Paul's comments of it just kind of seems to all come back to the workforce issues. I would, through my own personal life and work, I'm almost, sick of dealing with the issue in a sense in one way, but at the same time, it is the most, I would say, I think the most important thing. I don't know how we move forward with ensuring compliance with the Hcbs community rule, or how we move forward with kind of meaningfully thinking about person-centered individualized services, particularly for people with the very highest support needs. I don't know how we do that in a meaningful way without leaving behind a lot of people with the very highest support needs that can't be supported in a 1-to-6, 1-to-7, 1-to-10 staff ratio. I don't know how we do that without addressing the workforce challenge and the crisis. So that's my input. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hillary.
This is Nicole Jorwick. I would say that my motion would be that we do a report on access to home and community-based services, but include in that the impacts of the workforce to that access. And I just want to note that because so many employment services are funded through Medicaid, I think there's a way that we could importantly weave in employment there as well. So just that, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
This is Joe Macbeth, and thank you to all of the speakers. I'm at a loss as to why the vast majority of the recommendations from the 2017 report remain unfulfilled. We know it's an issue. We have solutions. I agree with Paul that we need to revisit it. But I also want to think a little bit more broadly about HCBS in general. I had a question in the chat for Nancy Thaler, and it's really kind of a rhetorical question. When you look at the 22 items that define quality in the HCBS settings rule, I look at those and there's this perception that the settings rule will be met by provider leadership and discussed in boardrooms. You look at that and those 22 areas are squarely on the shoulders of the direct support workforce. And they're not prepared to make that transition to the settings rule. The training requirements are pitifully low. And without preparing that workforce for the vast majority of HCBS services, will remain on this wheel just going around and round. So HCBS preparing the workforce for their new roles and revisiting those 8 or 10 recommendations from the 2017 report. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
I was going to
Yep.
just respond that as the commission does its, or the committee does its work, thinking about how to call attention to the issue, I think would be important. It's in some ways, it's like climate change. It's a national crisis, but we don't move. And I believe, by the way, that the childcare domain is in the same boat. There's not valuing people who do the work. And Joe, when you say most of those HCBS expectations are on the back of the direct care staff, it's also true. I think an earlier commentator said that about half of people with IDD present with mental illness. Absolutely. And those direct support staff must have competencies and support to support them. So, you know, we all go around saying it's a huge problem. And I think getting outside our circle, and certainly your organization does a good job with this, but we don't see a lot of personal newspaper articles yet. We don't see many congressional hearings. This hasn't risen to a point where people go, oh, my hair is on fire, we have to do something, right?
I need to point out that there are people in the chat that are members that can't raise their hand or comment, they're saying. So there's Deborah, Liz, so if we could look at the chat and make sure that we fix that. Thank you.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
We need someone to read out the chat, please, because there are also comments for people who do not, who communicate differently.
Okay. Hi, this is Kathy. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I'll echo what everybody's already said. The presentations and everyone that you've had participate, it's just been so incredibly helpful. I would like to add a little bit of a spin to the direct support professional conversation. Couldn't agree more. I have twin sons who have relied on direct support professionals since they were in the workforce. They're going to be 31 in August. And I am in a really unique position, I would think, but maybe I'm not. I wear 2 or 3 hats. I'm a mom, but I'm also the president and CEO of our food bank here in Delaware. And we are building. I've been in the role for just over a year. And I still remember talking with Rita Landgraf. If those of you that know Rita's work and know her new position, she will be the Assistant Secretary of Aging in the United States, the HSS. And she's just been a huge advocate. I've known her for years. And I remember saying to her, there's an opportunity at the food bank for us to hire lots of people with disabilities and do a lot of training here. And I'm going to do it. I just feel, I hope nobody thinks it looks self-serving, because I know that, you know, most people in this area, because our community is small, know that I have adult twin sons who I want to be working. And she said, Kathy, stop it. She said, who better than us to advocate for our kids and for our, as they get older, our children, you know, they still are our children. And she said, you know, that's how her son ended up in a role that has been so incredibly meaningful for him. And I just think that there's an opportunity for us, and I'm a believer in pilots. I'm a believer in kind of task forces. There's an opportunity for us to find more in my position, because I can build it. I'm in a position to say, here's what we're going to do. So I was listening to all the comments earlier, and we've now hired 5 people with intellectual disability since I started. We've got a handful of those, including one of my sons who was actually not employed, but steady volunteer role because his behaviors keep him a little bit uncertain and unreliable. So we have to be cognizant of that too. But his presence is training coworkers as much as my other son, who is working and is reliable. And I think that that whole big community awareness and education of what we bring to the table is important. But the other piece that we're now just adding, we got a grant to start a training, we do workforce development. And we're going to be doing culinary training specifically for adults with disabilities, with a special instructor who knows how to train people with disabilities and teach people. And so I'm hearing everybody talk today, and I'm just sitting here with chills because I'm so incredibly proud that we have the opportunity to do this in Delaware. But I also think we could be doing this all over the place if we've got the right people with the right attitude in decision-making positions. And I just throw that out there as maybe something we could put, as a national effort to kind of find more folks that are aware and know what it takes and know the need, and then can put the pieces in place.
Now, Wendy, the employees that you recruited, what kind of wages are they getting?
Oh, thank you. I forgot that part. So when I started a year and 4 months ago, we had probably 5 to 7 people making less than $15 an hour. So we immediately brought them up to 15. But more recently, just kind of keeping our eye on everything happening in the world. A living wage in Delaware is $18 an hour. So we brought everybody up to 18, and nobody gets hired at less than $18 an hour, whether they have a disability or not.
Great. That's great.
Yeah.
Jim,
yes.
I think we need to focus on two parts.
Okay.
One, I think we do need to focus on comparative employment because let's just face it, like we live in a country that it's all about capitalism. So therefore, those that have disabilities should be able to make a living wage and beyond. But my other point is we need to be focused on housing too, because there's a lot of people with disabilities that don't have housing, that need housing, and they need to be integrated into the community and not away in the community. So I think the housing and home community base in the workforce can go together in a church.
Okay, very good.
This Liz, myself, and this week is the 32 years anniversary of the ADA, and someone on Facebook replied, I was reading Facebook because I love Facebook, that Facebook hasn't been fully promised. People are still waiting for a lot of things, whether it's the DSP issue or the housing issue or the education. And we have talked about all of those today. So would it make sense to write a report about enough is enough? We can't wait any longer. We can't wait for another 32 years. I probably won't even be an advocate by that time. Maybe I will. But I'm tired of waiting, and we need to say enough is enough, and we need to say that people should be able to live and work and do everything that the ADA fully promised us that we would do, we would be able to do in 1990 when they got enacted. And I hope I said that word right. But I think that we need to put everything in the report, like everything else. We can't wait any longer.
Okay, Liz.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Hey, this is Dr. Paul Boskind, member of the committee. And
Yes,
I'm a
Paul.
psychologist and also a very large employer of other psychologists and social workers all around the country who provide psychological services in nursing homes. And what I've encountered in terms of working with CMS, we service Medicare and Medicaid residents in nursing homes primarily. And what we hear from them is you cannot treat someone with a cognitive impairment. You cannot treat someone with dementia. They have to be intact and capable. The problem with that is, to provide psychotherapy to residents in nursing homes or to anyone, there's 3 criteria. And one of them is that you can provide insight-oriented therapy. And maybe that's not as workable with someone who's cognitively impaired, but they also say you can provide behavior modifying treatment, which all of you on this call know can be effective. And you can also provide supportive therapy. But what tends to happen in the CMS system is that they hired guns, if I can say that, of intermediaries to oversee medical necessity. And they immediately go to the diagnosis of dementia, or in our psychological evaluations, if we talk about some level of cognitive impairment, then they say, no, can't treat them, can't treat them, can't treat them. And I would love to be able to reach out to CMS through HHS and through the President of the United States to say, stop it. This is ludicrous and far-reaching. And I think the group of folks who really understand persons with intellectual disabilities also understand persons with dementia, which is the other end of the age extreme, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Other comments?
Yes, this is Brent Leonard, Matthew Leonard. And I have a couple of comments if we're talking about what the report ought to focus on. I think it ought to be somewhat broad, like was done in 2016 with various focus areas, maybe something like enhancing and improving community living, and then have focus areas dealing with employment, education, community-based services, housing, direct support, because all those issues are incredibly important and integrate to dealing with the issues. On employment, I definitely got some ideas on what can be done to improve that with a focus on employers rather than individuals with disabilities and access to employment, but rather changing and improving employer workforces and the day-to-day work that's done so that it is in an accessible done in an accessible manner, and it can probably be started through federal government since it's a huge employer, and probably by executive order across agencies. On the education side of things, I think there really needs to be a look at the Higher Education Opportunity Act and the other related acts dealing with post-secondary education and provision of much better services for individuals who are trying to seek education beyond K through 12, to have things like essentially like an IEP from under the IDEA. Wouldn't be exactly the same, but similar, rather than the very minimal provisions that apply right now, like the ADA and Rehabilitation Act and 504 plans, which are fairly minimal. And I think something can be done to start to develop a education school to work pipeline. And again, I think the federal government would be a good fit for trying to create those kinds of programs within the federal government itself as kind of models. with regard to direct services, community services, housing, direct support services and whatnot, I think all those need to be addressed. You know, they all fit together. But my hope is that at some point within the report, it will also address the needs of tribal communities, tribal nations, citizens of tribal nations, Indian country, because I think they have been sorely left out of the picture. I'm not sure it's in any report to the president. And I'm not sure we even have data on the services provided to Indian country, in which federal government has trust responsibility to tribes. And I've got a number of ideas to deal with those issues as well. So I'm hopeful that we can have a report that's fairly broad, but with different focus areas that that cover the sorts of things that were covered by the speakers today.
This is Jill. I'm going to just interrupt for a moment, if I may. There are people on the chat, members on the chat, who said they feel they aren't being heard. In particular, individuals who need accommodations around having the chat, their comments read out via the chat, and people who need a little bit more time to be able to keep up. So if and these are members. So if we can just pause for a moment and look at the chat and give people there an opportunity to make a comment. So if they're, you know, so we just are hearing everyone.
Can Faith address that issue?
Yes, I can read some of the comments in the
Good.
chat, not be
Okay.
able to read all of them.
Okay.
One comment from Sherry says, health disparities have existed long before the pandemic. We need to educate healthcare professionals on interactions with the IDD community. Statistics show healthcare providers are not comfortable treating people with IDD. It is very difficult to find mental health care providers who treat people with IDD. We have a comment from Eva. Sherry.
Can I just respond
These
to
are
that?
to be comments from members. So I want to be sure that we're reading comments from members, and not just reading comments, but there are members who say that we need to slow down because it takes them more time to be able to communicate. So if we can please read through the chat and accommodate for that. Thank you. For members.
Jill, I think the comment was about the fact that there's so much in the chat that we want to maybe, so if we take like a few minutes so that folks can have time to read through everything. Jordan, just want to verify, but I think that was that there's so much good activity going on that folks want to be able to read through it all and be able to respond.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just make a comment? This is Chairman Brett on the health disparity. This is a good example now. Rather than going in that direction, NCD has spent the last several years working on a major report on health disparity, and whether it's access to dental care for people with disabilities, whether it's changing the curriculum in medical schools and dental schools, that it would be part of the curriculum, and how to diagnose, how to treat people with IDDD. So I think if we're really interested in this issue of health disparity, we may want to defer to NCD, who's done yeoman work on this, and maybe we bring them in to let you know exactly the work that they have done. But they have made major progress in addressing this issue, because it's an unmet need. You cannot have somebody employed if they do not have good health, oral health in particular. So it works hand in hand, but it's something that I think we may want to say, let's get more information on this health disparity from good friends from NCD, rather than having us spend so much time on it, only to find out, gee, the agency across the street has already got a published report on, oh, I didn't know that. So that's why I think that issue, if it's really something that is, you know, an issue that many members of the committee here are interested in, I'll be more than happy to take the lead to connect with the NCD folks and talk about the health disparity progress. Well, first of all, the health disparity problems that we uncovered and the solutions that we have come up with. But I must say, they worked very hard on this, and they have some great achievement to talk about.
Great idea.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Kara?
Hi. I believe.
Kara Jones.
I believe we need more people to help us get more.
Help us get more.
Help us get more people to work with us. Cause right now, all the
Get more people to work with you.
yeah. Right now, all we have my brother and my mom.
So she's saying to give more direct support services and not rely on family to take on all the burden of taking the responsibility of things, and to maybe have direct support in the evening and somehow transform that into more jobs.
Yeah. Did anybody get what I?
Does that everybody understand what she's saying?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And they be like, oh, you could go, go.
And why don't you tell them who you are a little bit?
I mean, no, it's not called Carol, but my mother Carol.
So her name is Kara, but everybody calls her Nikki, and she's from Silver Spring, Maryland. And what else?
They want me. No, I have to go to the.
You have to do what?
I have to ask.
Oh, so right now we're trying to get direct supports for the state of Maryland in the evening, but we may have to go to court and request it because the state of Maryland does not have enough caseworkers. For every one caseworker, there's 1,200 people in the same position we're in the state of Maryland, because a lot of them either quit or were fired.
They'll come back to work after the pandemic.
And a lot of them didn't come back to work after the pandemic.
You're saying this Chairman Brett, you're saying that each caseworker is assigned 1,200 individuals?
No, there were caseworkers that were let go and fired. So yeah, in some ways, yes. From what we've heard from our caseworker, that in the state of Maryland, one caseworker can have as many as 1,200 cases of families like ours.
Wow.
Oh, also, no, I'm not on board, so I don't.
You said you're on the board of what?
This committee.
Oh, yeah. She's on the board on this committee. What else did you want to say?
My mom got here because she's thinking.
Anything else you want to say?
My mom got here like this, so my brother stepped in for her.
Yes, our mother's not here right now, so I'm stepping in for her.
What does Kara get now from professional direct support?
So we get direct support from Adventist Healthcare from 9 to 5, and she primarily uses a motorized wheelchair. She has a ceiling lift and has a Hoyer lift. Primarily use a Hoyer lift. We don't have any evening services, even though we're just about hired someone in the evening, but we have to go in the private sector to do that. So the
So
problem.
you pay for that yourself, for the private, for the evening service?
Yeah, we have to pay out of pocket for that, with everything else rising in costs.
Right.
And so we try to get 3 days a week. And so it takes the pressure off us.
Mhm.
My mother has some serious health issues as well in her 70s. And so I'm kind of left doing all that, taking care of everything. And we were trying to talk to the state to give us services, and they say, well, 4 hours doesn't justify a job. It's not enough to create a job off if it's 4 or 5 hours. So that was their justification, not trying to give someone, approve someone in the evening to come in.
Right.
I have I do work also, but I have my own business, so so
She has her own business that she works on as well.
Yeah.
I'm actually me. I don't go out because it gives me up.
So are you saying that, like, if we had more aides, that you can go out and freely do more independent things?
Yeah, with
Yeah,
the
right.
aid.
Yeah, with the aid, yeah.
So you
So what do you want, a waiting list for the night professional staff? Oh, you're
Yeah,
not,
we're on it, but with them having 1,200 people, it's like we never know when it's going to come up. So
yeah, right. Okay.
This is Santa Perez.
Yep.
From
Perez. Yep.
From Nevada.
Uh-huh.
I feel that we have to talk about DSP. We have to talk about DSP right now. And how we are going to help that problem. Also, we have to talk about people getting older that we never talk about that. We have never talked about that population at all. A lot more people are leaving. No, living. A lot of people are leaving. No, leaving. Living. Sorry, living a lot longer, and they need more different. They will need different support than the end of the.
Okay. Well, thank you, Santa. Others? Chat?
Mr. Chairman, Eva now, hello, everyone. Good to see
Eva.
everybody.
I put some of my comments into the chat regarding priorities around employment opportunities and tying maybe those entrepreneurial opportunities that individuals with ID should be, working on and have opportunities to work with higher education in developing the workforce pipeline for direct care workers. Perhaps developing businesses themselves to hire individuals and provide direct support, and working with the SBA and brainstorming with those types of agencies that can provide funding opportunities for such work. But I also want to address some of what's being placed in the chat, I think by some of the individuals who are representing the public. Thank you so much for going forward and asking the NCD to provide an update on the health disparity report that you've been working on. Someone had mentioned, can we find out, most of all, what's been implemented since the report was written, and what its impact has been. I think that's so important. And someone else, I think from the committee, had talked about, looking at the last report, sharing that, what's working, what's been implemented, what have the impediments been to moving some of the things forward from the last report, so that we can, look at those hurdles, right away and identify ways in which to move around them or through them. I think what's important to whatever work that we do is also putting in there, whether we bring some individuals who are experts on developing metrics for program measurement, outcome measurement, and getting their feedback and input into how we can develop such metrics for whatever it is that we're going to be working on as far as priorities. Because most of all, we can do all of this hard work, and everyone can put in such passion and commitment to seeing these necessary things move forward. But if we're not measuring what that impact is, my fear would be that in another 10 years, a new committee, is talking about the same things. And until we insert accountability into whatever it is we're doing and moving resources to, resolving the issues that we're talking about today, I think we could, possibly end up in the same place. So we have to definitely talk about accountability, metrics for measuring impact. So that would be my thoughts for right now. Thank you.
Good suggestions.
My
Anyone?
name,
Yeah, go ahead.
my name is Lucy Meyer. It is such an honor to serve on this very important committee. I have cerebral palsy. I have both physical and intellectual disabilities. In education, starting at an early age is very important to me. I would like to see better resources and support for families of children with disabilities going through the IEP process at the beginning of their child's school career. Too often, the process is intimating the results. The result is the student doesn't receive the services that they are entitled to. This can be a huge barrier for their entire time the student is in school. Huh? I hope we can work as a team on this to make sure that this issue gets resolved as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. And my name is Lucy Meyer.
Thank you, Lucy Myers.
Cheese.
So this is Tia Nellis. And I believe that some of the things that we have been talking about was around including in Hcbs ruling that falls underneath those that we can sort of put together and talk about all those things. But there's another topic that hasn't been mentioned, and I think it is important, is that we are going to have people with disabilities from Ukraine coming to the United States. And how do we support those people that are coming from a different country, that are coming to the US, may have family, may not have family? What can we do to support that, to help that happen? I know that some of the people were saying that a lot of people with disabilities there don't even have the equipment and services that they need to even don't have their wheelchairs or walkers or anything like that. So I think that is a very important issue of maybe how we could address some of that for the needs of those people that are going to be coming here and really need our support.
Thank you.
Jim, can I add something to that or not right now?
What do you want to add to, Sean?
To add to Tina's point, there's a lot of people from a lot of countries, those that have lots of disabilities who don't even have basic support. So when we do our report, I will make a recommendation that we focus on, and I hate to use this word, immigrants that have the disability to be because we are a country of immigrants.
Okay. That's food for thought. I appreciate it. Okay.
I just, this is Joe Macbeth, Chairman. I just remembering, it was mentioned earlier that ODEP is going to be releasing a report from the think tank that they held back in February. And I think that the committee needs to spend some time reading that report and seeing if we could support in a formal way that report, perhaps. Thank you.
When is that coming out?
This is Andy Arias, the representative from ODEP. That's coming out tomorrow, so timely.
What does ODEP stand for?
Office of Disability Employment Policy at the Department of Labor. I'm sorry, I speak in acronyms.
No, that's okay. So do I have time. Thank you.
No, that's good.
Andy, can you give it to us by 4 o'clock today so we can review it?
And Hillary, we know that we know the Secretary of Labor.
We sure do. Yeah.
He's one of our own. Yeah, that's great.
I will get it to this committee as soon as I'm able. No promises on what the specific time will be.
Well, that's great. I appreciate it. That's a good suggestion too, Joe.
And Jim, this is David. I'll follow up on Andy's point. Mentioned in the comment earlier, ODEP did share an advanced copy with ACL, And they do have recommended actions. They made recommendations related to the following areas: DSP career pathways and training, professionalization of DSPs as a distinct occupation, DSP wages and benefits, and DSP as a career path for people with disabilities. When I did speak with the representative from ODEP, this is Andy's partner, colleague, Chris Button, she did mention that they do plan on working with the different federal agencies to help implement these recommendations.
That's correct, David. I didn't want to overshare and take other people's time, but yes, everything that David said is correct. So I will share the full report as soon as I'm able.
Okay, so what is the difference in the recommendations that DOL is making tomorrow than what was in the PCPID's 2017 regarding DSPs?
So the general consensus is professionalizing DSPs.
Right. Okay.
So the hours and the trainings and the incentive for people to get into this workforce, including individuals with disabilities, would be increased. And so this is like a more advanced description. And I really have to be honest and say that I need to reread 2017's report. It's been a while, but tomorrow's report will outline in a deeper way how to increase the hours and increase the employment incentives for DSPs, including those with disabilities.
Yeah. And Jim, to answer your question, in the 2017 report, there were 6 recommendations made.
Right. Yeah.
And they were much more high level. And I would say that the report that's coming out tomorrow from ODEP goes more into a little more granular level, and probably about 14 recommendations.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you,
And
Andy.
do they address wages, salary?
Yes, they do. So, yeah.
Okay, good. Look forward to reading it. Yeah.
Jim,
other questions? Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, David.
Would it be helpful for the committee to just take a moment to make sure we are capturing the nominated topics? I know Census and I are listening very closely. I can read what we think we heard.
Good.
And I can report back. Would that be helpful?
Yep.
At this
Go
stage?
ahead.
Okay.
Okay. I'm making
So what we hear is one item, Hcbs, which could include, of course, the direct support professional workforce crisis as a subset. Another nominated was direct support professional crisis by itself. Another related to the topic of healthcare. Third, another one is related to employment, but looking at it from an entrepreneurial perspective, perhaps, collaboration with SBA. Another being community living, perhaps related to the ADA, but more broader subset of enhancing and improving community living, where we can have, different topics like employment, education, housing. Another topic I heard was IDD, DD, and aging as it relates to dementia. Another topic was early childhood education. And another topic was immigrant children with disabilities. We hope we are capturing these, but is there something that we did not capture for the good of the order?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jim Baldwin.
Jim Baldwin.
My recommendation on employment is not limited to just the entrepreneurial things.
Okay.
What I'm really concerned about is a lot of these statistics that are coming out of the states are including hourly wages that someone is making and working 1 to 2 hours a week, and considering that to be a job, a community, integrated community employment. That's fine. I think it's great to have those kinds of positions, but to have, 20 hours to 40 hours a week is a different kind of job. And I'd like to see us really put together a push with the organization providers across the United States to find jobs that are meaningful, not hobbies or not just something to do in the day, but more than that. I think there's a lot to be said for a lot of self-esteem and a lot of self-help and mental and physical help by having a job. So it's not just entrepreneurial.
Thank you for that. And I believe it was Hillary Stannis that had mentioned, gave remarks related to that area, but I included your feedback under employment, if that works.
If I didn't talk about the entrepreneurial, just for 2 cents, I mean, I'm kind of on the other end of the spectrum here of hoping that if there is a focus on employment, like I'm trying to understand if that will also include meaningful day activities or if that's going to be a separate category, so to speak, because, you know, I come from more the subsection within the ID community of the end of the spectrum of people with really like the absolute highest support needs requiring, you know, total assistance and things of that nature. So I think it's like respectful to also be including meaningful day activities to respect what, you know, all folks are capable or preferring to do. So that would be.
David, I think that was me that you might have
Yeah.
captured.
Sorry.
It was the training through employment.
Okay.
Was that, I don't know if that's the way you captured it, but providing a kind of a full range of opportunities at an employer, at one employer.
And I think Wendy also kind of touched on it.
Okay. Yeah.
And I completely agree that meaningful day activities are critical to the development of our folks that we serve. It's very important.
The one comment I do want to make is there is currently, Nancy Thaler is actually on this committee, an interagency work group that is focused on, I think it used to be called Meaningful Day, but I think it's Integrated Day. So there will be federal resources coming out on that, I believe within the next month on that. So, but it's timely that we're talking about it.
David, when you did the survey with our members and you listed them, was it in this order? That was it community number 1?
So again,
employment number 2, housing 3, employment, professional staffing 4th.
So the top 3, 4 were very close, but number 1 was Hcbs, number 2 was employment, number 3 was education, number 4 was a tie between DSP, the Direct Support Professional Workforce Crisis, and housing. And so that kind of served as a framework for the presentations you heard earlier today.
But it's interesting that DSP was, you said, tied for 4th.
Yeah, and I think, again, you know, people might
my only point,
Hcbs.
Yeah, my only point is because of this hearing today and hearing these experts, that has moved up pretty high with an awful lot of our members here. So to me, it was very educational to hear these speakers to talk about one, you know, given the stats between now and 28, I don't know, 1.3 million jobs are going to be needed. And I mean, boy, if that isn't a red flag, at least for me, this DSP, that is a red flag because we have agencies throughout the country who are saying we have a 40% vacancy in staff. And the reason we have that is wages, there's no advancement or what have you. But because of that 40% vacancy, you have a huge number on the waiting list to get services who are saying, I'm on the list, but I can't get into the program because I don't have any staff. So I'm saying to myself, this to me is the crisis. How do we provide independence for people who want to live and an independent life if you don't have the staff coming along to take care of these people. And as somebody mentioned, our good friends are living longer, but they need services. And if we're not addressing services, boy, it's almost like, hey, you're on your own. You're on a list of 1,200 people. And I'm saying, wow.
So this is Jill. I'd like to point out that in the chat, someone mentioned that there was also the issue brought up of tribal people who live on tribal lands, but we didn't put that in when we gave the whole list. So I just want to make sure that we're not forgetting that was brought up. Around what we're discussing, I think what I'm hearing, and please, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the things that we're hearing as the top items, the DSP crisis, HCBS, employment, community living, are those like the 4 top things we're hearing, or did I miss one of the top ones we're hearing?
This list, and I think that Tia has raised a great point about immigrants. I don't know how to deal with this because we're the president committee. We're in the US and the president works anyway, tongue tied. But I think that we need to deal with immigrants because immigrants will be a big issue.
Yeah, and just, I wanted to respond really quickly to Jim's point, because it's a point well made, and I'm a proud board member of NADSP, so and a family member of a brother who hasn't had a regular DSP who isn't related to him in 2 years. But I also just would be remiss not to mention, and because the chat was moving so fast, I wanted to say it out loud, that if we don't expand access to HCBS and funding for HCBS, we're going to only be able to work on the fringes of the direct support professional work crisis. Because if we don't expand HCBS, expand funding for it, that's the only way to raise the wages, because wages of direct care workers are tied to Medicaid HCBS rates. So it's just, as someone who's constantly talking about this issue, I just think it's something we can't lose, which is why I made the recommendation to do it in the context of HCBS, but of course, strongly support including workforce and employment and other pieces there.
I echo what Nicole Jorwick said. I think that I will go back to the HCBS settings rule and the training required that is absent for direct support professionals for those roles we need to address. I also want to, I'm really eager to see that ODEP report, and how can this committee somehow support that or endorse that if we find necessary. And then last thing, thanks to ACL for sending out a notice of funding availability for a national workforce technical assistance center. It's a start, and it's something that we should also be supporting as the President's Committee. But workforce is everywhere. Workforce is pervasive.
This is Brent. I think education was missing from the list as well that was mentioned, especially as it integrates into jobs issues.
Can I just read the list again to make sure we didn't miss? HCBS to include DSP crisis on its own, employment, community living, IDDD aging, childhood education, immigrant children with disabilities, in particular refugees coming in from the war, and make sure that we are working with people on native lands. Did I miss anything else?
Not just childhood education, but post-secondary education.
Okay, education.
And integration
okay.
into, like school to job pipelines at all levels.
Got it.
All right. I lost contact. Did you hear everything I said? It's Jim Brett. You didn't
We
hear
didn't
it?
hear anything you
You
said.
didn't hear anything? Something happened to my computer up here.
Oh.
So you heard nothing of what I
No,
said?
sir.
Okay,
No,
great.
Chairman.
Okay, let me just say that when I was asking David about the rank and choice, employment, professional staffing was tied, but it was down at 4. What I'm hearing today, it's across the barrier, whether it's independent living or employment, or it's staffing. And boy, I just don't understand. When I read again, hearing the professor talking today, we're going to need a million new workers, 1.3 between now and 28. Well, if we're paying $16 an hour, I don't care how much of a professional ladder you're going to have in training for these people. If we got to address the wages somehow, but I think it's a disgrace when we call them professionals. We're making $16 an hour. But the point is, we need to either look at the 17 report and say, hey, let's look at something there why isn't this being implemented? Look at the report that's coming out tomorrow from the Department of Labor and say to them, hey, there's some teeth in here that maybe we're going to run with. But I just think this, the DSP is really, it's a big red flag out there. I mean, people aren't going to be able to live on their own. They're not going to be able to live independently because there's no staff. We just heard one of our members saying that, we're on a list, but it's, 1,200 people on the list too. Good luck in getting, direct staff professional to take care of you. So we need to find out what can we do to upgrade that. And I just read a report from an organization here in Worcester, Massachusetts called Seven Hills Foundation. And they said, we face it. We're the largest human service agency outside of the Commonwealth in Massachusetts. We got a 40% vacancy. We got a high turnover. And we need to do something on staffing. But they came up with an idea, and their idea was, hey, has anyone ever thought of looking at immigration, short-term, long-term? What their suggestion is, we have this category called H-2A. Well, that's only a visa issued for agriculture workers. And it works very, very well. Well, what they're saying is, why don't we create a new category? Why don't we call it the H-2C, which would be for human service workers? We need more human service workers across the board, whether it's the nursing homes or, group homes or independent living. But it's an interesting idea. And I said, after reading the report, that might be something we could look at. It could be a short term, it could be a long term, but it's thinking outside the box. And the bottom line is, I hope that whatever we recommend, we give a report to the president and we say, Mr. President, this is a major problem and here's the solution. And we hope that you will elevate it in discussion and advocate it. That's what we did in one of our previous reports. We had a small little section in there and we called it the Disability Savings Account. And all of a sudden, the president takes it and members of Congress got wind of it. And they found language that both sides could agree on, and they call it the ABLE Act. Where did it come from? Pcpid. So that's what my thinking is to be somewhat bold, outside the box, but also come up with something that's different, but also that could address an unmet need. But to me, the DSP is a huge red flag. Whether you're looking for employment, if you don't have the job coach, you're not going to get the employment. And if you want to live independently and you're getting older and you need support, you don't get the DSP, you're in trouble. If you're in a group home, you can see what you see today, 2 and 3, as my brother had 3 a year, a turnover, because they had big hearts, but they had very thin wallets because they had no money coming in for the employees.
So Mr. Chair, if I may,
yeah.
What I think that I am hearing, what we're hearing, and when people were commenting earlier in the open conversation, it felt like all that when we talked about employment, when we talked about community living, when we talked about aging, we talked about, all these areas, they all came back to the DSP crisis. And so I'm wondering, when we talk about the topic of HCBS, those services are all included. Like everything we talk about, all of those are part of HCBS. So could we do an HCBS with a focus on the DPS crisis and identifying the relationship? Because, the DSP crisis, when we talk about that, it's not just the caregivers that come and do our activities of daily living and IADLs. It's also people who are supporting us in the employment environment. It's people who are supporting us out in learning how to use public transportation and community living, learning how to do grocery shopping and budgets, and to create really effective real day activities. Those are all direct support professionals supporting all those things. So to me, and I'm not a member, but I'm hearing, I'm trying to give a synopsis. What I'm hearing is we're talking about HCBS, and we can talk about those as they exist, not just in states, but in territories and on tribal lands. We can talk about how that could apply to new immigrants, all under HCBS. And if we don't address that and how it's funded and the settings that those services are provided, then we can't even begin to talk about, any of the other things. So I believe that for me, what I'm hearing is HCBS is the issue, and with a focus on the DSP crisis and how it applies to every aspect of living, employment, all of it.
Yeah,
Nancy, I mean, what do you think, Nancy?
I just want to jump in on Mr. Brett's comments. This is the first time I have ever been in any forum on the topic of DSP where anyone has said the word immigration, and you're absolutely right. And it's not even out of the box. The tech industry has done this for decades. Recruit people from
H1-2Bs.
Right. And the reason, because if you look at the chart that I included in the PowerPoint, we could pay $50 an hour. If there aren't people to draw in, it won't matter. And in fact, we have parts of this country that are paying $20 an hour now and can't attract, because the competition is going to keep up with all the other industries. And so I think your statement, I thought the passion of your statement, you so zeroed in on what is on absolutely the issue. And the idea that someone might say out loud that we need people, I think is, for me, very encouraging. And I hope you can go down that path. And, to some extent, you can say what other groups can't.
Right. No,
you have a purity about what you do that allows you to bring those suggestions up.
Well, perhaps maybe it's my lawyer background or whatever, but I would want us as a group to really kind of get into the weeds and details of what that really means for both the workers as well as the people with disabilities. If we start talking about using the visas as you're talking about, because there's positives and negatives. I don't disagree with that. Like, we need people to work, right? Like that whole part of Nancy's presentation. The flip side is, I know, like in the agricultural context, right, it gets harder. You're really beholden to your employer. So are people going to be a little bit more concerned about speaking up when things aren't going well, issues of abuse kind of going unreported? It's like a really weedsy discussion for another time, but
I hear you. No, I hear you.
It's something we got to talk about.
But it's a discussion that's nobody's having the discussion. So that's your points are extremely well taken.
Thank you. That's what I love, is get the issue on the table for discussion as something different, a different approach, because we have this unmet need, short-term, long-term. How do you want to address it? And this is one area it has not ever been discussed. And again, I give kudos to Seven Hills Foundation in Worcester, Mass, who sent me their report. But I know the time is coming to an end. So we already eliminated our break, which was fine. But now I'd just like to, hopefully we can take a vote on the issues that just got surfaced. Again, our vote would not be announced during our meeting, only because we have several members already who unfortunately are absent. And we wish for them to weigh in with their feedback. So what we hope to do is to announce the topics or one or more in 7 to 10 business days. So if permission allows, I'd like to introduce Faith Dermott, who will help us guide us through the voting process.
Yes, hello everyone. So you should be seeing a pop-up come up on your screen now with a list of options. Please pick your top 2 options out of the list, and then your votes will be submitted. We ask that only the committee members submit votes, please.
For me,
And
it's saying that hosts and panelists can't vote.
Yeah,
Yeah,
getting
we-
the same thing.
But we're not a host, Lucy's not a host and panelist, but it says she can't vote.
Excuse me, I'm listed, I'm an appointed member, so I'm neither host nor panelist.
Let me check on that.
Me,
I think
I
it's,
can't vote
it
either.
says that for everyone, I think.
I can't vote. And I'm a member.
Yeah, it's not letting us, it's not working.
Liz, you are a member. You need to vote.
Yes,
You
I
need to
know.
vote.
It's not working.
Oh, it's not
Yeah.
working?
Yeah, no.
The technology's not working yet.
Okay. Faith?
I don't see it
All
either.
right. Okay,
I mean, we could see it, but we can't push on the thing that we can't
exactly. All right. I
check it
tried.
off.
Yeah, I couldn't check off. I got the poll in front of me, but I can't do anything with it.
Yeah,
I will work on troubleshooting this.
yeah.
I don't have the poll. This is Wendy. I don't even have the poll in front of me.
And my thinking is, if the technical glitch cannot get resolved, during the next 5 minutes, it's possible we could very much email this very same list to the members, all 33, and they could weigh in, within, 48 hours, with their feedback. That could be another option to consider, Mr. Chair.
Well, that's what you're gonna be doing for the members that are absent. So why not for these members as well?
And we would send it to all 33.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
members. Yeah.
sure. Okay.
That's something to consider.
Yeah, if we can't get it up and running.
It says the same thing. Hosts and panelists can't vote.
Online voting. Okay.
Mine is broken.
Yeah, I don't have the poll in front of me either.
I think they just took
Mr.
it
Chair,
down.
having an email to us is fine with me.
I think they just took it down for a minute to fix it. Okay, then they put it back up.
Yeah, can you? Still can't vote.
Still cannot vote.
Same problem.
Yeah. We see the poll, but we can't vote.
Yes, I am working to find a setting that will allow the panelists to vote, but
Oh, I
I
see.
do
Okay.
think that sending it post-meeting could be a good option.
The
Sending
what?
it post meeting, fine with me.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
Let's vote later.
Okay. What do you think, Faith?
Yes, I agree. I think that it'll be best to just send the
Right.
poll out to the committee members after the meeting.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's great. All right. Closing remarks. Let me just say that I know that some of you have already indicated you'd love to get the slides from today's meeting in the transcript. You will have them. They'll be posted on the ACL PCPID web page in, I think, 7 to 10 business days. So I know we got a lot of follow-up questions on that. So I want you to know that. The other thing that, the other question that came up earlier with me during the break was, are we going to be meeting in person? And we haven't established a date yet for the fall meeting, but, and so we haven't really made that determination yet, whether it's going to be in person or virtual. We have to be mindful of the health safety with, COVID-19. So we're trying to figure out, can we meet in late fall, November? But again, would it be in person or virtual? It depends on what the climate is like then. But boy, I'd love to be able to do this in person if we could. So stay tuned for that. But other than that, again, I just say thank you to all of the members for your passion, your commitment, your energy, and your stamina for the last 4 hours, and to be so patient in trying to allow us to get through all of what we did. But we did it, and we did it, believe it or not, 3 or 4 minutes before actually closing. So well done to the staff, to David in particular. You've done a great job in preparing today and with the speaker. So kudos to you. And if no one else has any further business, I would think that we can adjourn. Unless we have the commissioner, unless we want the commissioner to say something.
Well, I would just, reiterate what you said, Mr. Chairman, that everyone I really appreciate everyone's robust interaction and conversation. The fantastic reports that were given by the subject matter experts helped us shape and kind of to move us forward in that. I thank everyone for your time and your effort, and you will get an email that'll give you an opportunity to vote. If you're a voting member, you'll get an email for that, and it'll give instructions on when you need to respond by. So please keep your eyes out on your email and check your junk mail to make sure you get that from us, and we'll follow up if we don't hear back, just in case. Thank you. Look forward to see what's coming next.
Great. Stay safe, stay healthy, and again, thanks for your participation today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Very good meeting. That was a very good meeting. I learned a lot.